All right, it looks like we're very close to 11, so I will call the meeting to order, Council Budget Committee meeting. Welcome to everyone. First item up is approval of our agenda. Everyone happy with it? No additions? Do we need to adopt a motion to approve the agenda? So mover and seconder, please. Jaguar, Ketchabah. Call the vote, all in favor? And that carries, thank you. We have minutes from July the 27th to approve. Has everyone had a chance to read them? No errors? Again, I'll entertain a motion. Moved by French, second by Ketchabah. I will call the vote, all in favor? That carries, thank you. Remind everyone of disclosure of pecuniary interest. And I'm noting none. Thank you. We have no delegations, briefings and reports. Third quarter performance review, Manager of Financial Services, Deputy Treasurer.
Actually, I'll take that one on. For the third quarter, we have performance.
Excuse me, Jim.
We just have an introduction that's part of today's agenda. So to
Please.
get things started, I'll just introduce the finance team. So we have Jim Bunchu, the Director of Finance, and also joining us in the council chambers is Jennifer Ford, Manager of Financial Services and Deputy County Treasurer. We have Matt Waite on joining us virtually. Hi, Matt. Matt's a financial analyst for the county. We have Lisa Saperna, who is a senior financial analyst, who does a lot of work in our long-term care homes. So welcome to the finance team. And just to kick things off, before we jump right into the reports, I just wanted to provide the committee and anyone who's joining us remotely with a bit of an overview of what the schedule is for today. So the committee is meeting from 11 until 3 o'clock. So we have a hard stop at 3 o'clock, though we may finish earlier. We just won't finish any later than that. We have 30 minutes set aside for lunch at noon, where we will stop live streaming, and then we'll join back on at 12:30. The committee today will receive presentations from 14 of our departments, and the purpose of today's presentation is to provide the budget committee with a high-level overview and department-specific information, including background and overview, as well as some challenges and opportunities for the committee's consideration. And I think it's important to note that if at any time any committee members want additional information or justification on any of the items presented today, please let us know. We're going to make careful notes, and we will circle back with that information at your next budget committee meeting. So don't hesitate. If there's something that you'd like to see or you'd like to see presented in a different way, we will do everything that we can to make that happen. Depending on the amount of information and questions that are received from the committee members, we may have a lot of outstanding information to present to the committee, in which case we'll have a number of additional meetings that are outside of the original presentation schedule that we shared with you in July. So we have some proposed dates that I've included in slides at the very end of today's meeting. So depending on the amount of information and what the committee desires, we'll do our best to have some additional meetings and make sure that you have all the information you need to make sound recommendations and informed recommendations to County Council. So with that, I will pass things to Jim Bunchu.
Thank you, Julie. For the third quarter, performance was $385,000. That brings the year to date to $778,000. The items for the third quarter to discuss were in the homes. We had favorable performance that was flowing through from the case mix index that provided over 200,000 of good news. We continue to have performance in staffing because of vacancies in temporary vacancies in positions that we're seeing in library, admin services, and in HR. that's providing an additional 140,000. And in the administration building, we had performance in utilities and purchase services delivering $30,000. One thing just to note is although we have good news year to date, everyone should keep in mind that we still have the outstanding issue on pipelines where we are likely to see write-offs at the end of the year that will be offsetting most likely this dollar amount. So not necessarily going to be good news flowing through to year end.
Yeah, do you know what approximate quantum, what you're looking at for there?
I have yet to get final numbers from everyone, but just on preliminary estimates, I would see about 600 of that 787 disappearing.
Yeah. I do know, just as a comment, that our treasurer, Bayham, is telling us that though our risk exposure is well over 700, this year we may end up with just an exposure of close to 350. So maybe over 2 years.
Yeah, so we'll see when everyone does their final bookings, and as soon as I have that, I'll flow that through to the committee. The recommendation before you is that this report be received and filed.
Questions for Jim, comments? Julie?
Just a comment, does the committee wish that this be presented to council at the next meeting? The quarterly update?
I think it should be.
So we'll include that in the recommendation and we'll also include it in the upcoming council agenda.
Makes sense. Mover and seconder for that, please. Ketchba. Jager. I will call the vote. All in favor of that? That carries. Thank you.
Okay.
Next.
If we can go to the next slide.
Is it possible to make that screen larger? I guess I can see that one, that last one. Actually, I can see it. I was wondering about the rest of them. That is better.
What I find interesting is it's tipped down. Is that for glare?
Yeah, I don't know.
And Jenna, we can go to slide 4 to start with.
Do you need it adjusted? Because I think it does tilt a little bit.
It does, but there's also there.
Oh,
there,
okay, okay.
there,
Just
here.
want to make sure you're okay.
It is,
Well,
I
can
don't,
find multiple. I just thought, maybe that's for Tom. That's,
maybe the cleaner was in and
ah,
that's fine.
that looks better. Oh, I can see it.
Well, what about you? Are you going to be
You're
able
not
to?
gonna be able to see it now.
Julie memorized it.
So as Julie discussed at the beginning, the purpose of today is to go through each of the service groups to give the committee an understanding of their operations and their preliminary budgets. And then to receive feedback so that we can go back and fine tune the department budgets as you deem necessary. Excuse me. So the changes being proposed by each department will be affecting both revenue and cost, and we'll be looking at it compared to what was approved back in February, so about nine months ago. And then ultimately, the goal is going to be bringing everything back in December with a consolidated budget for the committee to review, and then we'll be looking at tax rates in March. So our discussions today will include then the impact of the changes that we've made to the plan from last February. And then we'll be looking for, from the committee for recommendations on which of these changes we should be taking forward for presentation to council at the next council meeting. As a reminder, the starting point for this budget is what was approved in February, and that 10-year plan had 3.6% tax increases on a home plan from 2022 through 2029. And then thereafter, we'd be looking at 2% increases. One of the key points to remember is that the asset management plan that we approved back in 2020, that was the genesis of the 3.6% increase over the 10 years in order to fund that plan. I understand the committee wanted to get a look at what we have in terms of cash and reserves. So this is what we'll be working on in the coming weeks, is looking how all these changes impact the cash and the reserves. But here's a history of where we are right now. So we began the year with cash of just under 4 million. We had investments of 31 million for a total of about $35 million of cash, which the intent of that cash is ultimately to finance our capital plan, predominantly with Terrace Lodge being a $5 million investment. We had, at the beginning of the year, money set aside for the completion of projects that are already approved and underway of $41 million. So what this represents is a total shortfall of about $6 million between projects that are underway and the cash that we have on hand. We did acquire earlier this year $6 million. That would be then used towards funding that program. And we have also then $35 million that's going to be carried forward in spending into next year on projects that have been approved, but the money will not have been spent this year. So likely we'll be sitting at approximately $35 million of cash by the end of the year. On the right side of the page is the reserves as they presented back in February. Total of just under $15 million of reserves. The biggest one on the page is what we call the mill rate stabilization reserve. That's the general reserve that is there for emergency purposes. One, to help smooth cash flow as we go from one tax payment or levy receipt to the next, as well as any other emergencies that may arise. We also have $1.5 million set aside for capital projects as a reserve, and then a number of other small programs.
Jim, what instruments are these held in?
So we carry GICs, and as well as we keep some liquid in a high interest savings account. Right now, we've been waiting to see where this plan comes forward, so we're heavier in the high interest savings account. Once we go through the analysis and look at the impact of this cash flow, we'll then make a determination of how we should then, or if we should get into some longer term GICs and when we'll be taking on the next debt payments. And so that'll be what we'll bring in, a preliminary look at that for the next budget committee meeting. And then we can finalize that when we come back in March with the final numbers of where we came out in terms of year end and a final analysis of what we should do cash flow wise.
Okay, thank you. One more question. Last fall, we started the discussion on not only the first 6 million, but there was an additional 6 million, so 12 million in debt carrying. And according to this, we've only exercised the first 6. We haven't exercised the second option.
You are correct about the 12 million. The first 6 was exercised in 2020. So that makes up the cash balance. At the beginning of 2021, we acquired the second $6 million was acquired in the spring.
Okay.
For a total of 12.
All right. Okay, thank you for clarification.
Now, in addition to formal reserves, what we also do is we've set up projects that are not available for spending by the departments, but are a set aside that the committee and council can then decide to release for spending at a future date. Once a formal report is brought to the committee and council for a recommendation, then we would look for that approval, and then we would convert that into a regular project for spending. What we added in 2020, and that was part of that asset management plan, where we went to the 3.6% increase, in addition to the $40 million that we added in capital. We added in a line item that grew over time to a total of $25 million that we're calling the growth-related reserve. The basis of that reserve is that we were looking at what new assessment is being added to the roll each year and what that's generating in incremental taxes. The philosophy behind that would be that as we're adding new roll, that also means added population. There's going to be a demand then for services from that new population. And so we're setting money aside so that that can be allocated as required. As you all know, we did bring forward development charges this year that would have been incremental to this. We're talking there about $400,000 a year is what we were anticipating in development charges. So this is actually a much larger amount of money than the development charges themselves that are available for whichever purpose this committee and council deem appropriate, but the title for it is growth related, and the way that we set it up was based off of that assessment growth.
So that represents the expenditure side, services that are required, and I assume that's balanced off on the revenue side?
Well, there is no expenditure side associated with this yet.
I realize that.
So it was established based off of the revenue. So we took that revenue and we said, let's set up a reserve equivalent to that incremental revenue. And that reserve is in a way a form of expenditure. It's an expenditure, though, that hasn't been approved for actual spending. It's been set aside for potential spending, but hasn't been approved. And so we would not release it and put any spending against it until we got direction from this committee. You can take so many thousands of dollars and move that from the reserve and set up a project under the name of whatever that might be. It could be a turn lane or whatever is required to meet the growth needs.
Essentially, it's a placeholder.
Yes. Moving on to the next slide, we have our history. I've already touched upon a little bit of this, but our starting point in 2020 was that we were going to be having inflation, we're going to have tax rates going forward that would be increased at the rate of inflation. So the assumption was 2%, but whatever that inflationary increase might be. And at the time, we had a capital budget of $152 million. That was the beginning of 2020 as we started the plan, but the asset management plan was brought forward with an incremental $47 million of capital budget. And at the end of that process, council approved an incremental 1.6% increase to go from the 2% inflationary increase on taxes up to a total of 3.6 in order to fund that plan, as well as set up that growth reserve that we spoke about. 3.6% on a $350,000 house would represent taxes of just over $2,100. And then if we're growing that at 3.6% increases each year, by the end of 2029, you would be close to about $3,000 of tax, county tax on that house. In 2021, the increase was 2.9%. So it was below what was originally targeted at 3.6. The reason for that is because we had operating capital surpluses. So not only did that allow us to lower the tax increase from 3.6 to 2.9, it also allowed us to fund the facilities asset management plan, as well as adding another $300,000 for priorities to implement the service delivery review, the recommendations out of the service delivery review, excuse me. In February of this year, council once again reaffirmed that the plan was 3.6 million going forward. And for 2022, that added $78 to taxes for that $350,000 home, which would bring taxes on that property to $2,265. This next slide is just a table showing basically what I was discussing in terms of increases. One thing that's probably worth noting is in normal times, that $350,000 house would have been growing in assessment. It may have actually grown in value, but because MPAC has frozen the assessment base, there is no change that we have to consider this year in terms of assessment growth. Every property is frozen unless you're doing actual changes to your property, right, and expanding the property.
But estimate the real growth on assessment just from new housing or development would be 1.5% range.
The growth component, probably closer to 2, but I won't have those numbers until it's released by MPAC and Opta in November and December.
Normally with a changeover, you'd expect an 8% growth. At least we would in our end of the county. We haven't got it. And of course, you're looking at 6-year-old data now. Yes, with projections that you're not going to see this until 2023. Right.
Now, for 2022, if we were to do a 3.6% increase, that would add 1.4 million to the levy. The levy this year was 39.1 million. Additionally, assuming that new growth, that development would add another 800,000 to the levy, which would take us to a total levy of 41.3 million. Now, obviously, from the discussions today, and I'm sure you've seen that these numbers could change dramatically. But to put it into perspective, for every 0.1% change in the levy, that would give you an extra 40,000 or take away 40,000 on the levy. And it also would change the tax on a house, that household that we talked about, that $350,000 household, by $2. So if we had only a 3.5% increase instead of a 3.6, the tax increase would be $76 instead of the 78. The next slide is just because we're going to move in next to each of the departmental reviews, and just to give you a perspective of how the various departments fit into the overall corporate structure. So you can see here that through the capital expenditures that engineering is making, that the total spend, they make up 32% of the total spend here at the county. The homes, because of what they're spending in wages, they make up 26% of the total spend, net spend at the county, with the other departments being relatively small in comparison.
I assume what you're referring to is like POA and or planning. They aren't, excuse me, information technologies aren't exactly, I got them right the first time. Planning and emergency services are just fractions. That's what I got. All right.
That is correct.
And just another comment, Mr. Chair, if I may. I also wanted to, because I know a few times the word, like a reminder that 3.6 was approved by council. And I feel like there's, maybe it's just me, but there's almost like a message and say, you approve this, and that we're almost starting like the 3.6 is a given, and anything would be a discussion from that. And so I fully endorse a 10-year plan, because then that allows us to have that big picture and outlook. But each year, I personally still don't start with necessarily a 3.6, because just like today we will see in all of the presentations, almost all departmental plans have changed. So I think it's fair then for council's plans for this 3.6 that we approved is fair game for change as well. So to me, so I just want to make sure that this whole exercise is about an alignment. Clearly, we will see that each department is trying to respond and listen and learn and adjust. So I feel that, to me, anyway, I just thought I'll declare what my sort of going in, my perspective is sort of 3.6 is set aside, and I'm listening for what do we need to respond to, what we need to align with, so.
And Councilor Shigari, completely agree with what you're saying, and but what we're doing is, as the changes are being made, if we had a plan that that council bought into, and I think we owe it to you and the rest of the committee and to council to say, although we had a plan 9 months ago, we believe that these changes are necessary. And as a result, we're requesting then this change, which will have this impact ultimately on the ratepayer. So that you can have faith that if we planned appropriately last time and we can explain why we're changing things, then you know, you have higher confidence that our current plan is sound if we can explain why we had sound rationale for changing the current plan. So we're just doing that to make sure that you have confidence in what we're doing.
Makes sense. And a quick follow-up is, I guess one of the reasons I was also mentioning that is I was wondering for each department, as you were planning, did you start with that 3.6 in mind, or was it more of a zero base, this is what we need? And therefore, let's see how that compares to the 3.6 we initially targeted.
We go through every single line item within their budgets and then we'll adjust accordingly based on need. But with that, then we're going to be saying, what's the change? There was a need last year, there's a need this year. What has caused the change in that need? That's my philosophy in how to approach it so that we can come back and explain why that change in need was required.
Thank you.
And then next up will be a look at the surveys, and our manager of financial services will take us through that.
Good morning. Through you, Mr. Warden, to the Budget Committee. This year's budget review was preceded by the 2022 budget survey. The survey was posted on the website for approximately 3 weeks, and paid ads were placed in the Chronicle Express and on Facebook. The Facebook ad indicated that the ad was shown over 11,000 times. Our engagement Elgin page had approximately 420 unique visitors, with 216 respondents participating in the survey. Approximately half of the respondents indicated that they were from the municipality of Central Elgin. The survey is provided to the committee in graph form. It indicates and includes information and responses to the 27 multiple choice questions in the survey. Respondents indicated for the most part that they were in support of maintaining existing services and that overall the services were important to them. The most important services were social services and long-term care as the top 2 areas where respondents felt more money could be invested. Acceptable ways to fund the investment or tax increases included finding efficiencies and decreasing spending in other service and program areas. However, if tax increases were necessary to maintain service, 75% of respondents indicated that an annual amount of 0 to 0.2% would be acceptable to them. 0 to 2% would be acceptable. Additional respondents had opportunity on 7 of the questions to provide anonymous written comments. These comments were compiled by county department and shared with directors and managers for their review before completing the county's budget reports. In some instances, the comments received were outside of the county's scope of work, and therefore we shared these with our local municipal partners for their information. I would be happy to answer any questions about the survey at this time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Questions, comments?
Comment, Mr. Chair, I know we modified the survey from last year and I think it worked out well. I feel that we gained even more insights in terms of what is important and where people are willing to invest and how they're willing to fund. So I think that worked out well. So thank you for together.
And just to quickly note, it was a great extra step that Jennifer Ford took by attending one of our local administrators meetings and going through the results that were specific to local municipal partners, and then collating that information by municipality and sending it out. So thanks, Jen.
And certainly if you wanted to have a look at it, you're welcome. I can give you the spreadsheet and I can show you how to use it.
Some of those comments, I think I know those people.
I'm sure you do. Mr. Warden, or Mr. Chair, I would simply, repeat what Councilor Jiguer suggested, that this is a valuable exercise. Again, it is, I guess, an exercise of transparency, soliciting comments from the population of what the expectations are, where they'd like to see spending. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to align, but it gives us an indication of what the general feeling is out there and where perhaps we should be trying to steer towards. Recognizing that the general population doesn't always know what we around the table know, or
Right.
what staff know.
Yeah.
So, but still, it's a useful tool.
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Warden,
Yes, Mary,
I'd just like to make a comment if that's okay.
absolutely.
I just wanted to thank Jennifer as well. That's amazing that she took the information that wasn't specifically, for Elgin County, but it was for other municipalities. So thank you, Jennifer, for sharing that information with the other municipalities so that they have an opportunity to understand what the general population is saying too. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So are we good with that? We have Michelle here. Well,
Yep, actually, before we, if I may, Mr. Chair, before we start with all the departmental presentations, I thought I would share in my review of all the presentations, I was kind of coming up with the same questions for each presentation. So I thought maybe I'll share my questions at the beginning, at the very beginning. And understanding that you may or may not be able to address some of these questions, but I thought if I just, so these, I have 5 questions, and so like I said, they apply to all presentations. And if they can't be addressed today, I think as Julie indicated, there'll be an opportunity for follow-up. So my first question was to what extent each department took into consideration the public input. So the survey results that we just looked at, because you may have noticed there's one comment in particular that says, all well and good that you ask for input, but it means nothing. And so that I do not want that perception to be cultivated. So if at all possible, in any presentations and recommendations, and as Councillor Ketchabah indicated, public input is not to say that, we have to react and agree to everything, but I think we need to demonstrate that we took into consideration and interpreted what the comments were and connected the dots with some of what is being asked and being proposed. The same goes with to what extent in your planning for 2022, each department took into account the forecast for 2022. So there are a few reports, the conference board has issued their forecast for 2022 in terms of inflation pressure. And I'm looking at our county in terms of, so we know food, fuel, fertilizer. So everybody's going to be squeezed. The projection that I've read is maybe just for a year, but it will be a really tough year. So we're all interconnected, and I see in the presentations today that in fact you are experiencing those pressures yourselves, but it goes both ways. So that means we are in a position to also exert pressure on our constituents and businesses and farmers. And I would like to hear or see in the presentation to what extent you were able to take that into consideration. So not just how you're impacted, but how you might be impacting our constituents. The third one was realizing those financial pressures. To what extent has your department looked at offsets? So I know personally in my own household, I've already predicted my fuel and heating cost is going to be pretty much double. And but my revenue with my clients and my business is pretty much set also for the next 6 months. I have no opportunity to suddenly add more revenue. I have to offset. So I have to look at my own budget, and there are things that I will not do or will not spend or will defer. So I know some, I think presentations included some options to defer, but to me, they didn't really feel like real options. They just felt like, well, you should do it anyway. So I'm really would like to see, like, what are we willing to give up? Because we will be asking our constituents, likely, everybody will be giving up a little bit for sure in 2022. Fourth question was, I was looking for connections and again, connecting dots with back to the service delivery review. I think there's one presentation in particular who did say, look, this is what SDR said, but this is what's happening now. So it was nice to see the continuity. We heard a lot of great ideas and potential cost savings. And, you know, there would be investments, but then eventually there would be cost savings. And I guess I was looking for more, like, let's not lose track of this. Like, this, to me, was not just a one-time thing. So I was kind of expecting, and I would like to see more dots connected with the findings, year to year, like how are we progressing? And my last question is, to what extent there has been collaboration in the planning with each other's department? Because sometimes it wasn't clear whether that actually happened. It almost felt like, so is everybody competing? So, you know, pick me, because every department is asking for a little bit more, and is the committee kind of expected to pick and choose? And so I would like I said, if not today, maybe a presentation as a almost like more integrated, united front. And maybe you did that already, but that's like I said, my fifth question is, to what extent was there that coordinated prioritization? I noticed on the software, that's something I brought up last year, for example, is software a departmental expense or is software an IT expense? And there were a couple of softwares that I thought, okay, so who's managing that? And we get the same request from two departments, and that's where I thought, oh, so, okay, so was this actually integrated? So those are my 5 questions and what I will be listening for. And like I said, to be fair, may not be able to address those today, but would look forward to more later.
If I can just, on your last question, make an input. What you'll find is in the presentations, each of the individual departments will talk about what their software needs are. But there's not 2 requests for money. The money is all within the IT department.
Okay.
So although you may have the homes, you'll hear from Michelle on what her software needs are. Those costs are not contained in her home's budget.
Okay,
So there is no double.
thank you for that.
Comment from Julie?
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Councillor Jaguar. This is precisely the type of feedback that we wanted to hear from the committee members, so that we can essentially use this feedback to create a framework for the next presentations that we come back to the committee with. So we hope to cover some of these items today, but I don't anticipate we'll be able to explicitly cover this information. So keep that in mind, that a couple of departments do talk about service delivery review. You'll see that some collaboration is taking place between, say, IT and certain departments, but we hear you, and we will use this. We'll have slides in the next round of presentations that specifically address all of this information. So thank you. And if anyone has anything to add throughout today, we'll make sure that we create the next set of presentations to reflect your wishes.
Thank you.
Just before Michelle starts, I have to agree with Councillor Jaguar from those surveys. And it's almost a constant, like it's maxed out for a lot of our ratepayers. And this winter, you know, you can feel this morning, it's cooler out. And those furnaces are kicking on, fireplaces, et cetera, et cetera. So you're very, very much right on point, because I hear that all the time. So we, you know, and again, I think we've mentioned around here, nice to have, or is it a must have? So I think we're all gonna have a pencil sharpener. Be very, very careful. Michelle, go ahead. Welcome again.
Great, thank you, and through to members of the committee. So today I'm going to talk about the homes budget. And so I'm going to provide an overview of the following objectives. So there's 6 there. And so case mix index, that's the CMI. You'll hear me say CMI over and over, but talking about the process and the budgetary impacts, so the efficiencies that we're identifying through that. I'm going to talk today about some new software to support both the nursing and the program departments, and provide an update on the dietary software and the impact that we look to see in 2023 budget. Recruitment and retention opportunities, the automated call-in program for shift replacement, and an update to the online scheduling. Ongoing pandemic staffing requirements despite anticipated pandemic funding completion date. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Of March 31st, and I can just put my volume down now. I've got that on. And funding announcements that have just come out recently, the potential budgetary impact. And so I'm going to try to tie those into the service delivery review priorities, and I've got them outlined for you there. I won't go through each of them, but I'll tie them in as we go through the presentation. Next slide. So the budget as presented really looks at the challenges that long-term care faces with the legislation, how it aligns with the mission, vision, and values, managing health and safety of our staff and our residents, and looking for positive resident staff outcomes. Next slide. So efficiencies for the 2022 budget are limited as long-term care home service delivery requirements and legislation must be adhered to. But my last bullet there is new because we have a significant opportunity for additional efficiencies, and we'll be talking further about the direct care staffing supplement funding notification. Next slide. So we'll just pop through these, but it is photos of each of the team members for the homes, so we'll just rotate through those. And of course, we have the 247 beds across the homes. And next slide, we have 396 full and part-time positions. So that's active and inactive staff. And it also includes our COVID-19 related 2020 positions. On top of that, we have contracted service providers, and we have some shared positions across the homes. We have 2 consultants, the same that we had last year. So we have the Terrace Lodge Redevelopment Project consultants. That's Gail Kaufman-Carlin, who's a huge support to that work. And Gail and I are working on the occupancy plan submission. That's a very labor-intensive project, so I'll be counting her support in 2022. And you heard me say CMI at the beginning, so a minimum data set, resident assessment instrument consultant there, and that's to support our efficiencies that we're finding in our CMI. I always like to take everyone back to the fundamental principle of the Long-Term Care Home Act. So our long-term care homes are primarily the home of its residents. The home is to be operated so it's a place where residents may live with dignity and in security, safety, and comfort, and have all of their needs met. Through our long-term care service accountability agreement, the ALSA, we are able to provide nursing care and services, nutritional care and services, housekeeping and laundry services, and program and therapy services. Through our AMSA, we're able to provide adult day program, overnight respite through the adult day program, and stroke program, and that's in partnership with the City of St. Thomas. Some successes in our homes in 2021. So we've been able to use our COVID funding and have redeployed staff. We still have a couple from the libraries that are supporting us through the pandemic, extremely valuable. And that's been a highly successful project. And then increasing nursing department placements across all 3 of our homes. So immediately upon the announcement of the accelerated PSW program and the additional PSW and nursing placement opportunities and programs, connected with all of our local and outreach as far as we could to try and get as many placements. And we've been highly successful. We are having nonstop student placements across our homes. And so that's a huge recruitment opportunity for our homes. So we're very excited about that. The majority of homes operating budgets are within budget. Part of that is due to the COVID funding that we are receiving, but we're very pleased with our current state. We always apply for opportunities for New Horizons for senior grant applications, and we're currently working through 2 of those projects, and we continue to receive a bit of support financially through our RNAO Best Practice Spotlight organization, and we're entering our final year of that 3-year program. We will be designated in 2022. The next slide speaks to challenges, and most of these challenges are related to the pandemic. So the infection prevention and control, all of those additional measures, you know what they are as well as I do. I won't go through those, but the testing, the screening, and then just constantly balancing risk management. So the infection and outbreak versus the risk, or that risk versus the resident quality of life. Next slide. So just a closer drill down again. I won't go through all of those, but I will point out, as you mentioned, supplies and raw food, those costs are always going up. So we're looking always for the best pricing that we can obtain for all of those supplies, but we're even having challenges in obtaining some of those. The biggest increase that we're going to face in 2022 is a raw food price increase of 5%. And all of this is having an impact on staff morale and culture. And so we're trying to do some education and support for frontline staff through that. Recruitment and retention of staff, I've been talking about that for a few years, not unique to our homes or to our sector, but certainly has been exacerbated by the pandemic and the mandatory vaccination directive. All of those are increasing or have the potential to increase overtime costs and increase operational compliance risk. Additionally, the long-term care home regulations and legislation where our sector is the most highly regulated and inspected, and recent announcements are actually speaking to increase in long-term care home inspections. As well, the Act is being updated, and we're hearing that we're going to see more accountability and compliance risk there that we need to really drill down into and look at. Pharmacy changes back in 2019, there was a change from a fee for service model to a per bed fee capitation model, with expectations there would be further cuts in 2020 and 2021. Those were paused due to the pandemic, but it's fully anticipated that those will occur in 2022. So we'll be looking at our pharmacy service change impacts and our potential to impact our education fund. It's a significant potential there. Adult day and Meals on Wheels, diners, clubs, those were all paused but have been are restarting. And the asset management plan, which I'm sure Brian Lima will be speaking about, we're in early stages of doing assessments, and we'll be looking in 22, that will be submitted, and have to look at the budgetary impact and outcomes in that regard. Utilities have been increased due to the addition of air conditioning, which was welcomed by many residents and families, but it has a cost associated with that. COVID funding, we've been informed, is ending March 31st, 2022. So we need to start looking at, and we are looking at how we're going to start addressing some of the spending where we can, but we know that there's going to be, or we anticipate that there will be some requirements that we are going for a while. So that screening, the active screening and the rapid testing, they just recently, we started October 15th, the randomized fully vaccinated individuals. So will that continue beyond March 31st? We'll need to wait and see what happens with that. There's things out of our control, or negotiated changes for wages and benefits. And I already spoke to raw food and capital. Next slide. So just a reminder, three main funding sources through our LSAW for resident care and services from the province, and then municipal funding, which is greatly appreciated to further enhance resident care and services and to help us remain competitive with wages and benefits from a recruitment and retention perspective, and the MSAW for adult day and stroke. Some other less but worthy of mentioning, so rebates from suppliers. We do have a number of suppliers with a 6% or more rebate, value added revenue, which funds all of our education across our homes right now. Meals on Wheels, Diners Club, grants, donations, and some of the project work. So we're always looking for opportunities to provide additional education for our team members, and of course the work through the Terrace Lodge fundraising. So what I'm really excited to be able to talk about a bit today, but to bring a report to council when I have all the details, is the 3 hours of care funding. So that's a provincial funding announcement related to 3 hours of care by March 31st, 2022, and then 4 hours of care over the next 3 years. Then the COVID-19, we've certainly had a positive impact with that funding in 2021, but again, that's looking to end in 2022 March. Medication Safety Technology Program funding, so we're getting a bit of funding there, but there are some challenges with that. So there's some challenges in regards to the technology availability of what we're I've assessed and identified that we want to implement, and it's time-limited funding, so it's for 3 years, and the costs in some situations may be more than what we're funded. So we're being very careful and selective in that process. Infection prevention and control funding, we've got some one-time funding that we're just implementing now to utilize, and the CMI funding, which has been a very positive position for us this year. We're efficiencies of $430,000 with the CMI funding, but that's variable. It varies year to year. It varies home to home. There's some of that funding that we receive that's called global allocation, which is not impacted by our CMI scores. And there's also discussion or sort of the looming of that switching, the funding model switching. So we've got it in the 10-year budget plan, but we need to really monitor and adjust that over time as recommended. So the Home's approach to budget is really looking to identify efficiencies. There wasn't a lot this year to find, but we were successful in finding some. Again, I spoke about the raw food, the wages, and the impact there. So I spoke earlier about some objectives. I'm going to run through each of those now. The first one was to maximize efficiencies related to our case mix index, that's CMI funding. And I've just noted there how it aligns with the service delivery review. Next slide. I want to talk about the process. So there's something called MDS-RI, and that's all of the assessments and the coding and documentation that our staff do. So the nursing staff, the dietary staff, recreation, physiotherapy, dietitian. And so they do the coding and we submit that monthly to CIHI, the Canadian Institute for Health Information. And then that data is used annually to calculate the home CMI scores. Again, we're doing very well at the moment, but if there's a change in that funding model or just changes in our resident care needs, then we can see that fluctuate up and down year to year. The next point was the new software to support nursing and program departments, and just covering off there the service delivery review alignment. So when we look at software for the nursing department, Docket software is a new software that's come out. They're the only ones with this software. And it's been highly successful in a number of homes to support and streamline nursing department documentation, the assessments that we're doing, and all of this is tied to our CMI funding. So looking to implement this software to further enhance our efficiencies in CMI, but also to minimize compliance risk. If we look at our compliance history over the years, we can see areas where if we'd had this software in place, we would have been at a lower risk of having a written notification through an inspection. So it's a mobile app. I've outlined the costs that would impact the IT budget from a 1-year implementation plan, as well as the annual licensing fee. We wouldn't be able to measure the impact to the CMI until 2023 or 2024 because the CMI scores are actually 2 years behind our actual data. So it will take a bit of time to see the impact there. Next slide. And then there's some program department software that volunteer management software, a low cost for the IT budget, but a very valuable tool for our manager program and therapy to track, train, schedule, recruit, and appreciate volunteers. And it does meet Ministry of Health standards. So it's $11.33 per year cost there. Dietary software was budgeted for 2021. We had hoped to implement it at the beginning of this year, but with all of the pandemic changes and requirements, we're just getting that started now. So we expect that by the year end, that will be implemented, and we'll start to be able to see the full effect of that program in 2022. So this is recipes, production, diet orders, cost and time savings, software, which will really streamline processes and documentation for the nursing and the dietary department. So the costs are included in the presentation, but what I'm really excited about here is anticipating some raw food cost savings and some staff time savings. I won't be able to budget for those in 2022, so we have put in the 5% increase in the budget, but I'll be able to really evaluate and analyze the metrics and the data to show some efficiencies moving forward in 2023. Next slide. So staff education, I wanted to talk a bit about that. So how is that currently being funded? And so I have a couple of grants that we're using through value-added services agreements. So 74,000 from one and 15,000. And that really does align with the service delivery priority. So to advocate for increased funding to offset homes costs to the county. So total education budget is being funded through this process. And we've got some great work planned in 2022. There's some potential changes happening. I spoke about some of the changes to value-added service, and Dominique, you spoke about some of the pressures they're facing. So there's risk of losing that. But as I was doing this presentation, I was happy to just get an email and learn that there's a ministry announcement on October 16th of supporting professional growth funding that we're going to be receiving. So if we lose that other funding, we'll have this funding to replace that. But if we're able to keep both, we'll be able to further provide educational opportunities and offset some of the costs of onboarding new hires. So pretty excited about that piece. Next slide. And then identifying and implement opportunities for recruitment and retention. So education, I spoke about the RNO Best Practice Spotlight organization is actually really attractive to new hires. And there's some work I'm doing with Fanshawe College on a supportive care assistant program to bring placements into our homes. And so I'm excited from that perspective because those individuals, it's a role that's sort of a level below the PSW role. But they'll be able to see opportunities within our homes in the nursing, dietary, and other departments. And of course, a long-term care staffing plan from the ministry with, I already spoke about the accelerated personal support worker and the placements that we're seeing. And so we'll continue to work with human resources through all of these opportunities. The next is a carryover from our current year budget to 2022 because we haven't had the chance to implement these. So the online scheduling, I'll provide an update, and the automated call-in program for shift replacement. Next slide. So an update on the online scheduling update or program. And so the RFP was awarded in 2021. Work is being done in the initial phase of data extraction and template population. And so for the homes, the online scheduling implementation is anticipated to begin early 2022. So excited about this because we're looking forward to a reduction of manual processes, to start engaging staff in this new opportunity online, and to really provide timely and accurate schedules, which will have a positive impact to staff morale, staff satisfaction, recruitment, and retention. But also that budgetary piece is anticipated late 2022 and ongoing. If we can get this program successfully implemented, I do see, and that was identified through the service delivery review, decreased overtime costs. And we currently have temporary part-time clerks in at all the homes because of the staffing and call-ins through pandemic. That's been funded through the pandemic funding. But if that funding ends in March of 2022, I am putting in a request to continue that through 2022 to support the implementation of the online scheduling program and the call program because the time involved by the clerks and the managers to support implementation is critical upfront to make sure this is successful. Next slide. So the automated call-in program for shift replacement, again, looking at that timely and accurate automated call-in process, saving time, significant time savings for the clerks and after hours for our registered staff, and allowing that time to go back to support resident care and services and the homes administration. Through the service delivery review, I think there was an estimated budgetary savings, which I've commented on there. And again, we need that clerical and management support for implementation. So I've identified anticipated estimated costs for those. Next slide. I've talked about this a couple of times. I won't spend too much time on it, but if that funding ends, what is the obligation for active screening? Because we're doing that 15 to 16 hours per day. Will there still be that requirement for rapid antigen testing of not just those unvaccinated visitors, but also fully vaccinated individuals, and the ongoing requirement for additional assessments, since there's a lot of work behind that in the nursing department. So some good news, funding announcements, potential budgetary impact. So 3 hours of care by March 31st, 2022. And along with that, some allied health professional funding. I've got in here, we were awaiting funding letters, but they just came in Friday. But unfortunately, they don't have all the information that we require to make the decisions and present all the information. So the ministry will be hosting a webinar and I'll be able to provide additional information soon. But we're looking at, we need some more information to identify which hours of the nursing department and is it paid or worked hours. We do know now it's per bed funding, but there is significant opportunity for efficiencies that I'll be able to bring forward coming soon. And I've just pointed out there, again, the alignment with the service delivery review. So in summary, which I should have this slide right at the very end, but it's out of order a little bit. We will continue from the homes to prioritize service delivery review objectives, identify efficiencies and opportunities to reduce municipal contributions. And I think through the 3 hours of care funding, there's a good opportunity there. Ongoing with the CMI efficiencies, overtime reduction through the scheduling program and the automated call-in program. So some good opportunities there. Continue to investigate all funding opportunities and recruitment and retention strategies. A lot of work happening ongoing with human resources in regards to that, and certainly my involvement at the Advantage Ontario. I'm still on the board, so that's a great opportunity to advocate and bring forward concerns and advocate, and then just on maximizing opportunities to implement continuous quality improvement initiatives in the homes. And then I think we're into the slides for the financials. So I'll speak to those, but Lisa or Jim, if you have any other comments, please jump in. So this is on the left-hand side, the expenses. And the comment below, you can see that wages and benefits are 86% of total expenses for the homes. And then on the right-hand side, funding of the levy is funding $800,000, excluding facilities, and with facilities, 5.3 million. The next slide, the summary of 2020 actual, 2020 budget, 21 budget, and 22 budget. And you may say, why is the 22 budget lower than the 21? It's because in 21 we have the COVID funding. So that's where you're going to see that change. The revenue and wages and benefits decrease because of the COVID-19 support. And the next slide shows the 10-year plan cash flow change from prior plan. Again, we're seeing changes due to extra revenue from the province and our CMI performance. So we're doing really well right now. And the next slide, capital change here is due to extra funding. So we received and brought to council a report on the infection prevention and control minor capital funding, which was great timing and well utilized. Next slide. So there's some recommendations which I'll cover off. So an improvement of 233 for the long-term care be included in the 22 homes budget. That includes our CMI efficiency with offsets. And then I've got the dollar amounts for docket and the licensing there. And next slide. Carryover request for the automated staff call-in program that we were not able to implement in 21, and the attached licensing fees. And then the request to continue that temporary part-time clerk support to make sure that we really do a good job implementing the call-in and the scheduling programs. And that's a total of 75 across the homes. And then that'll bring a report to council outlining the financial impact of the provincial funding related to the direct care staffing supplement funding, the 3 hours of care, and the allied health professional funding, once full funding details are available. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Michelle. Good report. So I will open the floor. Just to point out, Grant, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. I guess we just won't allow you to vote, but you're certainly welcome to ask questions. So anyone with a question, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Michelle, docket, just remind us again, this was a new initiative for 22. It wasn't proposed for 21?
Correct.
Okay. Couple other things. Can you remind me of what the negotiated wage increases were with the organized labor? What was the settlement? 2%, 1.75?
Depends on the union.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for ONA was 1.75, and I'm not sure if Amy's on what it was for SEIU.
We can follow up.
We can follow up, yeah. Thank you.
further questions? Looks like everyone's happy.
So we're behind schedule by 5 minutes already, and we have to do a closed session report for the homes. So with the committee's consent, we'll just carry on for another 10 minutes, cut lunch to 15 to keep us on track.
5 or 10.
Pull your sleeves up, keep going.
And questions, but we do need a motion to go into closed if that is the will of the committee.
Moved by Ed, second by Dominique. All in favor? That carries. We are in closed session.
Stop live streaming.
All right, call the meeting back to order. Next up is Jeff Brock, our IT. Jeff, welcome, and go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Okay, so I'm going to go through this presentation as quickly as possible. I know we are tight for time, so I appreciate everybody's time, but as it is currently, there's 6 full-time members. I'm the only new addition for this year. Next slide, please. Services provided, so we do support the admin building, the POA, long-term care homes, libraries. We also provide support for 2 of our tier municipalities, those being Central Elgin and BAM. So, next slide. So for the budget process, what we did is we looked at industry and determined that more focus needed to be applied to cybersecurity. So we'll see an emphasis on that in the budget request. We also looked internally at the department to determine where efficiencies could be realized, which is reflected through software requests that manage resource requirements. And also we looked at some training that develops the team in some key areas. We also needed to ensure that we were able to get as much value out of the software purchases. So with that in mind, we tried to find a balance between resource requirements and the software so that we were actually getting value. We weren't only getting 50% usage out of our software. So yeah, next slide, please. So this slide kind of highlights some of the items requested in the 22 budget. There's a number of requests for software solutions for other departments. These will be either covered later or in subsequent presentations. But these costs are allocated to the IT budget, which I think was clarified this morning. And then as indicated, there is an emphasis on cybersecurity, time management, and development for the department. So next slide. So this slide kind of goes over some of the key challenges we found in our department. So cybersecurity, like I said, is a recurring theme. Cyber attacks have an impact on the ability for an organization to function, as well as a financial and reputational impact. Applying multiple layers of security provides the greatest strength to the organization. Understanding where the organization is with regards to cybersecurity will allow us to better plan for improved security. The requests in this budget attempt to address that challenge. The next one we have on there is the community connectivity. Many of us are part of the connectivity committee, and we realize that access to reliable and affordable high-speed internet remains a very high priority for the county, and we do have some recommendations forthcoming. The next challenge is with regards to resources, and we feel that development of the team in areas such as business analysis, project management, as well as some software-specific training will position the team to be at the forefront of discussions with other departments with regards to technology rather than simply implementers. We do find sometimes that departments are actually bringing suggestions to us rather than bringing a problem to us and us trying to address that with technology. So we'd like to develop the team a little bit more so that we can do stuff like that. So. And then the last challenge I have on here is what everybody else is seeing is the supply chain. There's not much more to say about that one. So, yeah. Next slide, please. So this just goes through some of the successes for the team. So support through the pandemic with development of some forms, support of remote workers, and then a return to the office as well. and also some collaboration tools such as WebEx and Zoom. We also increased bandwidth at the library branches to align with the shift from in-person to online usage and things like that. And we also engage with local municipal partner IT support to try to better understand what challenges he is facing and what challenges we are facing, and seeing if we can align any of our efforts better. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's some of the IT requests. The first one is with regards to hardware replacement. So hardware in this sense refers to both end user devices such as laptops, desktops, that sort of stuff, as well as infrastructure items such as servers, switches, network gear, all that sort of stuff. Failure of an end user device may only impact a single user or a function of a department, but failure of an infrastructure item could impact a much larger number of users. It could impact an entire library branch. It could bring down an entire wing of an office, that sort of stuff. So these need to be kind of included in there. There's a few methods organizations use with regards to replacing hardware. One is to wait for devices to fail and then replace. And then another is to actually replace on a predetermined schedule based on industry information, discussion with peers, and evaluating the appetite for downtime within the organization. We have chosen to use a replacement schedule because waiting for devices to fail creates uncertainty and creates a dependency on a supply chain that is currently struggling. And older devices also typically require more support to maintain. So implementing a schedule allows for improved accuracy in budgeting. It reduces the risk of downtime due to device failure, and it increases productivity as newer, faster devices are released and deployed. So the request for consideration for the hardware replacement is an increase of 5% over 2021, and this is inflation and increased cost of devices because of supply and demand. Next slide, please. The next request is with regards to training and development. So it was identified in the service delivery review as an area for improvement in the IT department. Training provides a team with improved skill sets to support organizational initiatives as well as create efficiencies within their own area. Access to webinars and trade shows provides the team with a better understanding of new technologies and processes that can help the county achieve some of its goals. Areas for improvement that we have identified include business analysis, project management, as well as software-specific training such as Laserfish, Microsoft, and Cisco. Typical IT course costs on average $3,000 per course, and there are 5 members on the team, resulting in an increase from 2021 of $6,000 for a total ask of $15,000. Next slide, please. So an IT service management software, sorry.
But you had 6 members of, you're not including yourself for training?
You're right, I did not include myself in training. That's a good point. And I thought about that this morning. Typically, providers of education programs for IT offer deals later in the year. So we're hoping to stretch that dollar a little bit. It's kind of a goal.
I think that's a great idea.
Once people stop buying training, September, October, they normally do things like buy one, get one half off, things like that. So we can take advantage of that. But thanks for pointing that out. I need to take myself into consideration there. The next piece that we're looking at is what's referred to as an IT service management platform. And we currently are using a free piece of software to log all incoming service requests. The application actually becomes end of support at the end of 2021. So this means that although it may remain functional, there will be no more patches or updates applied to it. Unpatched applications can become unstable and unreliable and potentially a security risk, since patches often address security vulnerabilities. Benefits of a full-featured ITSM is that they contain workflow capabilities that will streamline and possibly automate some requests. They allow for reporting on where time is being spent, such as projects and day-to-day tasks. They also contain knowledge-based repositories for storage of resolutions that would reduce time in researching common issues. And they typically contain a project management piece to better understand resource constraints and allow for better planning for requirements. And on average, that's about $14,000 annual subscription. Next slide. So the next few are all pertaining to cybersecurity. So first one we're looking for is a complete cybersecurity assessment, which we would repeat every 3 years. We'd utilize this as a strategic tool that will assist with developing direction for addressing cybersecurity at the county. The initial assessment will develop a baseline for the county's current cybersecurity posture, which will include a cybersecurity maturity rating. Through consultation with these security experts, the IT team, county leadership, and council, an acceptable maturity rating will be determined that will allow staff to plan to achieve that goal. Standards such as ISO 27001 or NIST are typically used to measure the county against domains such as security policies, asset management, vendor relations, and access control. This is how they come up with your maturity rating. So reassessment after 3 years will address any new technologies that have been added, as well as ensure that any previously identified risks have been addressed. And I tried to look for some metrics that we could measure these things against. So there are things such as intrusion attempts, security incidents, mean time to detect incidents, mean time to resolve incidents, patching cadence, and then company versus industry performance. Just trying to find things that we can actually measure this assessment against. So, and that cost has been quoted at about $35,000 every 3 years. The first one is going to, like I said, develop a bit of a baseline to see where we are against the industry, and then we'll have to put a plan together on improving that posture. Next slide, please. This next one is quite interesting. It's a AI security analyst. So that's artificial intelligence. And what this actually does is it acts as an analyst for the organization. So it takes the place of having a security analyst body on staff. But the biggest advantage of this is it doesn't take any breaks, vacations, or sick time. It works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It actively monitors the network environment for both known threats as well as anomalies to normal behavior. The application takes about 2 weeks. Well, it actually continuously monitors what a normal behavior of the network is. And then any anomalies, it can alert or action those immediately. Another advantage of something like this is that malicious code executes at a very rapid pace. An application such as this also uses code to react and eliminate the threat before there is an impact on business functions. We're currently actually running a proof of value on solutions such as this, and I can give a couple of examples of things it would find. Last week, we were alerted of traffic going between a device at Bougainville and Toronto. And upon investigation, we determined that I think a member of Brian's team was working with the company that does the security cameras there, and they were doing support on it. So it's not malicious or anything, but it's something that we weren't aware of at the time. So it's very good that we see these things, because that could happen in other things. So what it also highlighted is that we maybe need better mechanisms in locking these sort of things down, policies around who can access what and when, all that sort of stuff. Another example it found was a file called passwords in a directory called passwords, which for obvious reasons, that's kind of a no-no. So we address that one quickly as well. And then another big one is and I'm not sure if I can, how much I can speak to this, but we did have an email spoofing event about 2 weeks ago. And so what email spoofing is, it's a technique that tries to trick a user into thinking they're getting a message from a trusted source, but it's actually a malicious actor behind that. And this proof of value actually isolated that event as 100% spoofing. So that event would have been stopped as well. It's an extremely powerful tool, and it comes at a cost of approximately $85,000 with an annual subscription.
I'll just note that that incident is unrelated to one previously relayed to council.
The next one is referred to as a privileged access management solution. So privileged accounts are basically the keys to the network. So privileged access management is focused on the special requirements for managing powerful accounts within the IT infrastructure or enterprise. As I indicated, these accounts are the keys to the network. If the network was breached, these are the accounts that malicious actors are after. If they gain access to these accounts, they have the ability to traverse the network uninhibited. If these accounts are compromised, a legitimate support staff could be locked out of the network. So PAM's solution can actually scan the network, locate all these accounts with elevated permissions, encrypt them and store them in a vault, and eliminate the biggest threat, which is humans, to accessing these. Everything would be managed actually through this application. And I looked on the IBM site last week for a little bit of information on it, and it indicated that 80% of all data breaches are the result of access to these privileged accounts. So that's a lot. And they typically run around $25,000. Consultants. So at times, IT requires the assistance from consultants, regardless of how developed our team becomes. This could be for planned items to address new hardware or software that the staff is not familiar with. It could also be unplanned to address system downtimes that is either outside of the skill set of staff or the affected system is so critical that time dictates that we bring in an expert to help resolve that. The amount being asked for is unchanged from the last 10-year plan, but I just kind of wanted to touch on it anyways. Slide. Okay, so the next few slides, I think we talked about this morning, relate to other departments. So Michelle spoke about HCM this morning, her staffing. So it does come hit against the IT budget, but it's being spoken to from other departments. So maybe next slide. Long-term care has a number of initiatives that are reflected in the IT budget, and I think she spoke to them this morning as well. Next slide. GIS, Brian will speak to these, but again, these are on our budget. And library services, they do have a hosting plan for some library data, and that there's been an increase of $4,000 for that, which results in a $40,000 increase over the 10-year plan. Admin services has the intranet maintenance and bang the table, but it's all reflected in the IT budget. So just quick on the wages and items removed. So increases on the wages is because of the addition of myself. And then one item that we did remove from last year is the Infotech research group. Although it has the potential to be a valuable tool, the resource commitments for that were such that we weren't really able to realize all the value we potentially could get out of it. So we felt that redirecting some of that money to more focused training might be more effective at this point in time. So as Michelle said, I can quickly speak to these, but Matt may have to elaborate a little bit on these. So it's a pretty even split between the categories here between wages and benefits and our operating costs and our capital costs. Funding, we do, like I indicated earlier, provide IT support to two of our lower tiers. And so we do get some revenue from that, but the bulk of it is from levy. So this may be something Matt might want to speak a little bit to, but there have been items moved from the capital side to operating. And that's why there's a large reduction in the capital cost and part of the increase to the operating piece, as well as the new asks that you're seeing here. So this kind of highlights that we did move 125,000 from capital for HCM and about 130 from capital for the modernization tools. So the increases, as it indicated on the bottom there, reflect the capital moves from capital to operating. And again, this is a change, is a reflection of the movement from the capital to operating. So this is kind of a summary of what we've been reviewing here. So it's obvious that cybersecurity is an emphasis for the department. The items requested create the foundation for developing a stronger cybersecurity infrastructure. The assessment will provide solid direction to provide or progress forward and highlight areas that require immediate focus. The AI tool achieves dynamic and real-time protection without heavy resource requirements. And the privilege access tool will securely manage the most critical accounts. With regards to IT development, IT technology changes at an extremely fast pace. As a department, we need to plan accordingly to ensure we keep pace. Without development, we fall or we risk falling behind as a department and an organization. And development of the IT staff also lends itself to potentially attracting LMPs to utilize services from county IT staff. And then just a little bit about community connectivity. We have been working as a connectivity committee to address the need, and the exact resource requirements from IT are still unknown, but the department is ready to address whatever those requirements may be. And with that, I'm ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have any questions, comments for Jeff? Go ahead, Dominique.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions. The first one that comes to mind is any exploration on what AMO or LAS has to offer? I'm throwing acronyms. So the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, I think in some cases when it's something related to or that is used by all municipalities, sometimes there's some programs we can access. And I vaguely remember, I think it was last year, there was some cybersecurity workshops offered to municipalities and a toolkit. And I don't know if anything came out of that. Like sometimes there's just one purchasing so I would like to hear or know if there is something, because obviously we're not the only municipality dealing with this. And like I said, I think that was recognized by AMO.
Okay, no, we have not looked at it, but we can look into that. However, the AI application came from a presentation at a MISA conference. So there are other municipalities utilizing that, and that's what drew our attention to it.
The other thing that came to mind was it a couple of years ago, we had to look into specific cybersecurity insurance.
Yes.
So I don't know on top of my head how much we pay for that, but I was wondering if there would be a positive impact if we were to invest in all of these tools from AI security and cybersecurity and additional. I don't know if our premium is all related to all of the, precautions or whatever, so.
Yeah,
Wonder
so
about that.
not 100% on that, but we have looked at some documentation from Mike Hoekstra, and the questionnaires ask these sort of things. Do you have an application to secure your privileged accounts? Do you do assessments, that sort of stuff? So it wasn't clear whether it will impact your rates, but my assumption is that that's why they're asking these questions.
And we're out for tender right now, or proposal rather, on insurance. And so you'll be seeing before December, the updated numbers coming in on insurance proposals. And it looks like cyber insurance may become far more expensive than it was in the past, just because of the nature of the global environment in that regard.
Right, so to that end, if we're out now, but we have not implemented any of these measures, so we wouldn't know any opportunity to reduce our rate, like, I don't know the timing, do we have to renew our insurance now? Can we wait until a decision around the implementation of some of these tools? Sorry.
Through Mr. Warden, I think you raise an excellent point, and what we'll do is touch base with our current insurance provider and others to see whether there is a correlation. So if municipalities are investing in these things, is there a positive benefit? And then go from there. We'll provide an update at your next budget committee meeting. Does that work?
Yeah. A couple more, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're talking about the assessment that we would conduct a cybersecurity assessment every 3 years. And I recall from last year, I think it was through Infotech, there were other assessments that as I recall, would need to be conducted in terms of business continuity or just reliability of infrastructure. I can't remember, but so would it make sense? Or do you see that we would have to do cybersecurity assessments as a standalone, or can that be a little bit more integrated? I'm looking at cost savings in terms of like not doing piecemeal assessments. I would assume they're interconnected.
So as long as you're measuring against the same standards, because the initial assessment will provide you with a rating, like a cybersecurity maturity rating is typically what they call it. And then they'll tell you what the industry standard rating or industry average is. So if we measured against the same standard, then we could maybe consolidate them a little bit, yes.
Carry on.
Thank you. So some of the recommendations are intriguing in terms of the AI security. I was wondering about the sequence. If we were to go ahead with a cybersecurity assessment, should we wait for the findings before committing or agreeing to go with an AI security solution?
So I considered that as well. I guess what I would say about the AI is it is similar or akin to having an individual there watching. So it's real time, and it's not only looking for known threats, but it will look for anomalies all the time, right? So regardless of what the assessment comes back, it's going to say that we need to review our logs more and that sort of stuff. And that's something that is very time consuming for a human, but it does not take long for code to go through and find anomalies. So I think that there's a lot of value in it outside of the assessment. So.
And I think it's my last question. You mentioned there is a lot of pressure on the supply chain, and I think anything purchased next year would be paid at a premium. So is there anything that can wait, perhaps you've already sorted through that, but I'm thinking there might be things that absolutely should not wait for the reasons that you pointed out. But are there things that ideally we would do in 2022, but it may not be worth paying a premium because things should calm down in 2023? So I would be curious to know and to see if there's a kind of a priority list and like B list.
So there isn't currently, but I did hear the comments this morning, and that's exactly what I thought, that maybe we can do a quick reevaluation of that and see if there are any items that we could potentially put off for the year. Something we can look at, absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Grant, go ahead.
I'm probably the stupid one with talking about computers, but when you look at cybersecurity, and obviously the ransomware is the big one. So how does our system work now? Are we going out to a cloud-based server, or are we still in-house with the servers? And
We're in-house.
where do you see that going? I guess?
So currently we're in-house. However, with regards to even the HCM, that is a cloud-based solution, right? So we're looking at opportunities to become more cloud-based because then you need less assets in-house, right? But I think it's still going to be on an individual basis, right? You need to be able to make a case for putting it in the cloud versus having it on-site or on-prem. Currently, we are on-prem though.
Thank you.
Jeff, I like most of what you said this morning, actually. Gonna throw, what if? What if this committee or council comes back to you and says, hey, we've listened to the public, we gotta cut back. And say, just pull a number 5%. If you had to cut 5%, what would you say? Where would you cut it?
Well, I guess as indicated, hardware, we can look at hardware. You can always get more life out of hardware. There's no question to that, right? It just comes at a small risk, right? And then I guess the other one would probably be the privileged access. We can implement other policies and things like that that would start to get us moving in the right direction to secure those assets, like the accounts. Those would probably be the areas I would look to. The hardware is the lion's share of our budget. And then outside of that, it's applications that support other functional departments. So perhaps having discussions with departments to see, is there opportunities to scale back some of these applications?
Julie?
That's a pretty bold question, Mr. Warden, that I think Jeff did a great job answering at a preliminary level. We'll take that question and put it as part of our templated presentation for the next round of presentations. I think it's an excellent question that's really going to challenge each of our service areas and takes a little bit of time in order for them to consider the risks and opportunities that would exist within their departments to find savings. So
I certainly appreciate your candor, Jeff. I did not mean to. But I think we sense the mood of the public. And I think we're going to hear that question, must have or nice to have. And I apologize for putting you on the spot. And actually, I did like your report very much. I think we all need to look at all those things. I did not ask that of Michelle because I don't think she's got much wiggle room. There's a lot of pretty stringent rules there. I think you did a good job. Thank you. Anyone else? Keep up the good work, Jeff.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay,
Yes, we-
thanks for,
I want to stick around for Brian, but I got to get going. Thanks for allowing me to sit in.
and only 30 minutes.
It's only 30.
These three budget presentations in one.
Okay, I'll try and stick.
No pressure, but
Need the moral support. I know.
you still there, Mary? You're hearing all right? Good, good.
Good, thank you, Warden.
Just butt in. If I'm not paying attention, just butt in. Throw a pencil at me or something.
Well, basically, I'm just really listening intently.
Okay,
You can text me and I can.
okay, yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Warren, through to the Budget Committee. 6 minutes behind, so I'll make up the difference here. So very briefly, your team is, as presented before you, there's 17 full-time members, 2 8-month co-op franchise students that are supporting engineering, and 1 admin assistant supporting all 3 department disciplines, and 2 4-month postgraduate tourism assistants. In terms of budgets summary, EPE as a whole provides administration of engineering, planning, and economic development and tourism functions. Key challenges before the department as a whole is contending with municipal asset management planning regulation, a significant capital intensive program, dealing with unfunded development pressures, timely facility maintenance, limited departmental resources, but still being able to deliver the required services effectively with a nimble team that exists. More to be discussed, impacting this year's 2022 budget is a $13.2 million worth of new projects added to the 10-year capital plan, resulting from OSIM inspections completed within the last couple of months, as well as one key project for which will be presented to County Council in the very near future is the new proposed roundabout at Highway 3 Ford Road, Ron McNeil line. And then most importantly, and picking up on the comments of Councillor Ketch about earlier, inflation associated with construction is the biggest impact. It makes up 2/3 of what the variance is. Department successes as listed there, I won't go through them in any significant detail unless the committee wishes to do so, but they're all listed there. It's been a very busy year. Facilities again. Planning. And then enterprise. So with respect to budget notes, major maintenance projects fund smaller LMP projects intended to reduce road maintenance costs. So for example, the Phragmites program is funded through that budget line item. Road signage reflectivity assessment funds signage replacements identified as a result of the signage reflectivity inspections completed by LMPs. Structural inspections, as referenced earlier, completed earlier this year. Specifically with respect to software, there's 2 elements included and proposed as part of EP's budget this year. The first one being CityWorks is a new software solution proposed by the county and in support of LMPs for implementation that offers a comprehensive suite of applications. Application for asset, work order, fleet, and property management. Additionally, Geocortex licenses are required to support LMPs in designing, building, and maintaining GIS applications for their improved functionality. It's the evolution with respect to the county's administration of GIS, which we will be deploying here in the coming weeks. And I'll speak to each of those further. So again, with respect to variances year over year as it relates to the engineering transportation focused budget, this is the impact that is identified. So first things first, in discussions with Central Elgin staff, the deferral of St. George Street reconstruction by a year was included. Altered rehabilitation methods with respect to third line is proposed, equating to increased costs. Quaker Road resurfacing changed, again, rehabilitation strategies and deferred till 2023. Village of Richmond reconstruction, detailed design, construction cost estimates, now that detailed design is completed, resulting in increased costs, again, resulting from last year's unit pricing. Springfield Road microsurfacing deferred. Fillmore Bridge deck replacement was a new project as identified by council and was never contemplated. Eaton Bridge rehabilitation was deferred. Once again, the highway roundabout at Highway 3 was never a project identified, but is now. Culvert rehabilitations as a result of year-over-year unit costs, it's resulted in an increase. Through discussion with BAM staff, Port Burwell Storm Sewer Project is deferred. Deferred Wellington Road McBain traffic signals indefinitely for the time being, given MTO pressures with respect to whether or not they're required. Preparation of county-wide master servicing plan was included. Implementation of GIS-linked asset management and work order management software solution was also included. And the addition of a second departmental truck necessary to support our in-field inspection activities was also included.
Brian?
Brian, what's the advantage then of going to a new method for road rehabilitation? In other words, rather than pulverize and asphalt paving to cold in place recycling, if there's going to be a significant cost increase, why?
Yeah, great question. It ultimately results in an extended life cycle for that section of road and ultimately resulting in a reduced cost over that life cycle. So that's the proposed strategy. And that was based upon a site assessment and condition assessment completed earlier this fall.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay. There's a quick map, which we're happy to distribute after the fact, showcasing each of the locations of the proposed works on roads and structures. So with respect to the impact as it relates to the 10-year capital plan, as shown there, we detail the previous 10-year capital plan had indicated $154.1 million worth of required investment. The new proposed increase is now $187.6 million. That's a difference of $33.5 million. Again, a list of justifying projects is detailed there. And most importantly, once again, 2/3 of that value is made up as a result of inflation. OSIM inspections specifically identified $5 million worth of capital upgrades and projects to the county's structures system that were never contemplated or identified by a previous consultant. Again, the roundabout at Highway 3 is a significant costed project at $4.8 million. Fillmore Bridge, once again, was a new project never contemplated, and countywide master servicing plan is another project that was never contemplated in the 10-year capital plan. On the facility side, variances include a new installation of a standby generator at POA. It's my understanding it was contemplated as part of detailed design, but was excluded as a budget containment effort. Since operation of the facility, there's been numerous occurrences where power has been lost at the facility and it interrupts court services during that time. The next line item, installation of UV LED air filtration system, is something that the province has mandated. Now, within the last day, there's seems to be an indication that may not be required, but to date, they've noted that it is. Administration building, we've included a new project, which is to renovate the former POA suites here at the front of the building in order to accommodate fire training space as well as economic development and tourism space. Now that everybody has returned to work, we are running out of space. That issue has returned. EMS Edward Street, replacement of standby generator, that is mandated by TSSA. They've given us a direction and a deadline to complete that work. For Revilla, there's several projects tallying up to over $250,000. Elgin Manor is consistent with our building condition assessment and previous plan, so it's in line with what was previously forecasted, so no significant changes there. And then Terrace Lodge noted several safety and mechanical issues within the main building not impacted by the redevelopment that also needs to occur as a result of annual inspections. Variance on the facility side is slightly.
Sorry, Brad, before you slip off that last slide. So with the mandated replacement of the standby generator, I'm assuming that generator's probably got 10 or 20 hours on it.
It has very few, yeah.
Can it be moved over to the POA?
The load, the size of it would not accommodate the size of that building, unfortunately.
So do you get a trade-in value on that?
We would, in past, when I've been part of generator replacement projects, we've generally include that as part of a tender, yeah.
Yeah, is there some value there?
Could be.
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
Again, on the facility variance side, a slight increase, plan over plan of about $3 million. The justification with respect to each of those individual projects, again, some repetition based on what I previously quoted are included there as well. We're happy to break any of that out as required. On the planning side, proposed variance includes retaining a consultant for the implementation of a natural heritage study. And for clarification, the report itself is a technical document, and the consultant would have a background. A consultant would be retained that has a background in both planning and ecology needed to recommend the appropriate planning policies for inclusion in the county's official plan. That's as provided by our manager of planning is the justification for that. Official plan update, 5-year review, some additional monies added to the budget in order to fund rental of meeting spaces and enhanced communications that otherwise weren't included. Increased personnel development, a minor increase there. And with respect to the land division committee, no change above inflation. On the economic development front, proportionate allocation of my wage has been allocated to this department and offset adjustments in other disciplines, other departments within, other divisions within the department. Planned membership in the Southwestern Ontario Marketing Alliance in partnership with the City of St. Thomas is included. In-house preparation of a new departmental strategic plan is planned for next year, and monies have been allocated to do so. And it's important to note that a strategic plan is required in order to seek ministry funding. Preparation of a new visitors and Sabre Elgin guides has been included. Maintaining funding investment towards the Elgin St. Thomas Small Business Center has also been included. Increased funding investments towards direct investment, business retention and attraction, local food and cultural and workforce attraction initiatives were also included. Replacement of the tourism van, the van that the county currently owns is literally on its last legs, and thus needs to be replaced. Renewal of the South Central Ontario Region SCORE Economic Development Membership fee has also been included. Kate's here if there's any questions with regard to that.
Welcome, Kate.
In terms of consultants, there's a myriad of consultants that the department relies on from time to time. I will note, however, our dependence on consultants has reduced significantly now with the ability to prepare designs in-house. But there are other supporting consultants like geotechnical consultants, specialized consultants with respect to structural inspections. There may be inspections at our various facilities. And from time to time, media and marketing production assistance is required, whether it be for ECDEV or some of our capital projects. From a budgeting process, each year, we really focus on back to basics, needs versus wants, and really start the budgeting process right from a zero-based budgeting approach. And so all the values are costed to the extent possible with the values based on historical unit pricing and so on and so forth. We've also strived to strengthen interdepartmental member municipality partnerships wherever possible, and evidence of that example being GIS, asset management plan, procurement services are just a couple examples of that.
Brian, if you could just linger on that, so if anyone's out there listening, so read that twice, because I think that message needs to get out to the public. I admire that, because that's what people are asking for.
Yeah.
So if we concentrate on any message today, I think that slide is ultra important, in my opinion. So I appreciate you having that.
Financial position, series of graphs here, so please.
Has a question or a comment, sorry.
Mary, go ahead. Sorry, I missed you.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. I have a couple of questions for you, Brian. The one for SOMA, we've not been involved with SOMA, have we? This is something new, right? Working in conjunction with St. Thomas?
Through you, Warden, to Councillor French. It would be a new membership with SOMA. It's been considered in the past, but it's not something we have actually done.
Okay, I didn't think so. I just wanted clarification on that. Also, Brian, I just wanted to ask you a question about when you first started your report. I got a couple of things to mention. The first, when we look at the overall budget, when you take it back and you're looking, because I know you're looking for input from us, deferrals on projects, like maybe there are projects we can defer. So I think we really need to look at that. And we also have to look at other ways to rehabilitate roads and infrastructure. So if there's something that we can do that's more economical, but it's still going to extend the life of, you know, a road or whatever, I think we really need to look at those. And, you know, I should mention too, with the deferrals, I know a lot of times it's not good to defer projects because it can end up costing more money, but with the inflation the way it is and everything, we've really got to take that into consideration. Thanks, Brian.
Go ahead, Brian. Thanks, Mary.
Great comments, Councillor French, and certainly, hopefully, you get a sense of some of those adjustments made in the plan, and you're seeing that. And we're happy to consider different strategies if the committee wants as well. Again, the inflation impact here as a result of new projects that are proposed is the single primary reason why there's such a huge variance here. So appreciate those comments. Quickly running through these charts, again, on the engineering side, you know, expenses versus funding contributions. Notes there at the bottom, provincial funding with respect to Port Bruce Bridge has now been received. The value of $3.4 million with respect to RMA funding values, that's a value from 2021. And that value has increased based on October CPI. We're estimating will now be, I think, in a presentation I referenced, $3.57 million. So there's an increase there. October CPI, looking at Jennifer, was well in excess of 5%, just to give the committee a sense of the increase there. And then obviously the majority of costs within the department are funded by the levy. On the facility side, again, expenses versus funding. Planning land division. Planning is predominantly majority being salary and wages. Same goes true with operating expenses for economic development and tourism in that regard. So our expenditures, combined operating for the entire EP budget is $14.3 million. Again, there's a value of $3.57 million of which is associated with funding for LMPs with respect to the road maintenance agreement. Transportation capital for 2022 is $16.7 million. Right now, the plan suggests an annual investment of $18.8 million is required over the next 10 years. That's a slight increase plan over plan. Facilities capital listed there at $1.4 million for 2022 as compared to the recommended $2.7 million investment. The primary reason with that is deferral of projects associated with White Station for the time being, just to make sure, just to advise the committee. Revenue sources are detailed there, the general levy, federal gas tax contribution projected for 2022 being $1.5 million, OSIF funding $1.2 million. We were successful in a grant funding in support of electric vehicle charging stations, which are currently being installed. Tenant leases amount to approximately $744,000 for 2022. There's permits, road boundary agreements, and other fees that the departments generate, and then tourism membership makes up a minor revenue stream as well. Budget summary is before you. It's just further broken down between revenue, wages, benefits, other operating costs and capital costs. Loss of revenue relates, noted there again. Loss of revenue noted as a result of funding no longer available beyond the one-time funding for Port Bruce. As the graph indicates, a slight increase as over the prior plan. Factors include road maintenance agreement and potential funding envelopes on projects. Cash flow based on the proposed plan is as indicated there. Again, $33.4 million increase in capital investment is proposed. Again, 2/3 of that is made up by inflation. Shockingly. The other important thing to note that engineering staff for the last 3 years have been tracking unit costs. And one thing we've noted and have included in this year's budget for the first time is an increase right now solely with respect to urban reconstruction. Historically, budgets have been increased 2% year over year. But for the last 3 years, construction inflation is in the magnitude of 4.75%. So that is another significant impact, impacting the overall plan and impacting the 2022 budget. So any urban reconstruction projects identified over that 10-year plan have increased by 4.75% for 2022, and then reinstatement of the 2% has been applied every year after that. We'll continue to monitor that value, but that is a potential risk with future budgets moving forward as well. On the facility side, again, revenue, wages, other operating expense, and capital costs. Capital costs are projected to be reduced this year. We're trending on par with the building condition assessment and the plan that was previously prepared and considered by the committee and council. So no changes with respect to that plan are proposed. No significant changes other than White Station as previously noted. Cash flow indication in order to support the plan is indicated there. Planning and land division, loss of shared planner accounts and the majority accounts for the majority of decrease in revenue, wages, and benefits, as indicated there. Cash flow change is also indicated there over the plan cycle. Increases in spend reflect committee changes, timeframes for iPads, and required website updates for official plan review have also been accounted for here. Economic development. One of the most significant increases is the result of having to purchase a new vehicle for the department on the capital side. Other increases, as previously noted, accounts for an increase on the operating front as well. Cash flow as compared to the prior plan is indicated there. And the 10-year plan is also indicated there as well. So 2022 highlights summary. On the transportation side, I'm gonna quickly run through this. Fingal line rehabilitation, Village of Richmond reconstruction. These are budgeted values for each of these projects. Imperial Road rehabilitation, including what was identified by IBI Group 2 years ago for a continuous left turn lane out front of Clovermead, has been included and incorporated into the project. Fillmore deck replacement, again, new project included. Elm Street and Centennial Roundabout, increased costs in 2022 as a result of that project. Implementation of GIS and asset management work order system. So CityWorks is a comprehensive suite of applications for asset work and property management. implementation and annual licensing fees are noted there. We and council can expect a report coming from Strategy Corp in the coming weeks with respect to a review of the road maintenance agreement. And this will be a recommendation coming out of that. So it's important to note that these fees will not only support the county in its effort to retain the level of detailed information, both asset and work order management that it has never received, but will also support LMPs in that same endeavor. So this is something for which the county is proposing to fund that LMPs will be able to benefit from by extension, not only for contracted road maintenance provided to the county, but also for your own internal programs. Okay. Geocortex, again, is an evolution of the next step of GIS administration, soon to be provided by the county. Essentially, every LMP will have its own Geocortex license and will be able to develop applications that it sees fit or request the county to develop on their behalf and be able to administer it, as opposed to relying entirely on the county to manage your own data. Okay. On the facility side, again, generally in keeping with the building condition assessment and the 10-year capital plan, once again, you'll note White Station, no capital costs are planned to be incurred in 2022 as we're in a holding strategy, and the projects as previously discussed are included in those lump sum values. On the planning side, in terms of 2022 highlights, anticipating completion of the official plan review, potential implementation of the Elgin Natural Heritage System study with respect to policy guidance in that regard, and advancing planning website accessibility and document rebranding and ease of applicant understanding. It's planning processes can be very daunting, very confusing, and so we're looking to make that user experience, improve that user experience. On the economic developments front, enhanced partnerships with the city of St. Thomas and the St. Thomas Economic Development Corporation, membership in SCORE, Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, etc. Reestablishment of Elgin County Conference Series and Ambassador Program, and something that has occurred in the past, and we're looking to reinvigorate that program. Replacement of the departmental van, in-house preparation of the departmental strategic plan as opposed to retaining consultants to do so. Increased departmental attendance at various community events and trade shows, and increased business facilitation liaison throughout the county being a primary focus for next year. So, options to consider. An attempt to reduce the capital plan. Projects that completely remove and replace all of the road elements or rehabilitate the pavement structure would be suitable to defer. So examples could include closure and removal of select town line bridges, and listed 3 in particular. That amounts replacement value of about $3 million at this time. Each of those bridge locations are being reviewed as part of the Transportation Master Plan. And so recommendation from IBI will be coming forth at some point next year with respect to that topic. The risk obviously being social impact for those that will be impacted by those bridge closures. Deferral of urban reconstruction projects, further to Councillor French's point, staff can certainly look at holding strategies to buy some time and defer those projects. When tallied up, they amount to $41 million over a 10-year plan. The downside being there will be increased capital and maintenance costs that will be incurred, as well as extending the overall county road infrastructure life cycle. Item number 3, have to throw it out there, road rationalization, downloading of assets. There are town line bridges that aren't connected to a county road. And so, the question needs to be asked, the risk being asset renewal projects, resurfacing, have an investment timing window, as well as bridge rehabilitation have a timing window, and deferring these project types will increase future costs. And it's important to note that road rationalization exercise is also being undertaken as part of the Transportation Master Plan. So look forward to those recommendations. Number 4, deferral or elimination of the master servicing plan. You know, that was something we threw out as part of an outcome of the economic development, tourism, and support of industrial development. That is something that could be removed. The risk being further potential delay of collaborative sustainable growth and economic investment attraction affecting the county. The good old adage, pay now or pay later. It's quite evident, unfortunately, in this year's budget that saying rings true. Roads that have been planned for reconstruction for many years will be further delayed, resulting in increased maintenance and replacement costs, which I spoke to earlier. And then deferring facility and or fleet lifecycle equipment or component replacements will increase future costs, and reactive intervention activities will likely increase. So, recommendations before you that the required optimal and adequate 10-year transportation facility focused investments identified in the respective 10-year plans be supported to maintain and improve existing overall condition and level of service ratings, and that if further reduction of requested budget funding is required, consideration be given to deferring specific reconstruction capital projects and eliminate bridge assets as opposed to impacting asset renewal related projects. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Grant?
Just before I leave, my 2 cents worth, and you can take what it is. I know the Fulton Bridge, it's in Southold. It is something that we don't need. It's, I don't know what the traffic volumes are, but I suspect it's probably 20.
50 cars a year.
Okay.
50 cars.
50 cars a year.
And I don't imagine Jamestown is much different. And I don't know Gillette's, but I think that's $3 million we could save real quick. It's not gonna have an impact to anybody to speak of. That's just my opinion.
Is that 3 million net of the cost removal?
3 million based on replacement value right now.
Okay, so you know what I mean? There's still going to be a removal cost, but
Bridges don't per se need to necessarily be removed. They could be repurposed as a pedestrian link
there you go.
and live on.
There you go.
Could they,
Cycling, yes.
Yes.
could they be sold? Like, could they be privatized to the landowner?
That is another option. It has occurred both within the city of St. Thomas and I understand in the county in the past. Where a road has been closed and the structure's been sold for a penny to the property owner.
The Jamestown one will probably get some pushback, I know that.
We'll bring more information about this option back to the committee.
Please.
Is there anything else from Brian's presentation that the committee would like to hear more about? Councillor French, are you happy on the line? Okay.
There's some hard news there, but it's truthful. So, yeah, we'll be scratching our heads for sure. Dominique?
Mr. Chair, yeah, if you could expand a little bit on the additional software, Geocortex and CityWorks. I know last year, I think it was last year that we did the GIS enterprise license to the tune of 133,000 per year. Thank you, Grant. Was there an asset management component to that? Not at all.
No, that was never included. The original enterprise license agreement only included one Geocortex license. And so the vendor misunderstood the outcome, the ultimate outcome of the program. And so the additional cost for these additional Geocortex licenses noted is in order to support each of our LMPs with respect to their GIS needs.
And CityWorks?
So CityWorks is a new proposed ask. Again, it is an anticipated recommendation that's going to come out of the road maintenance agreement. I know we're getting LMP staff are keenly interested to see what county council decides because they'd love to see the county initiate and support them in the same endeavors with respect to asset management. I know Central Elgin staff are keen to proceed forward with a solution and would like to partner with the county in that regard. So again, it's a recommendation that's coming out of the road maintenance agreement that we're including. It will, we expect, anticipate, make LMP road inspection operations easier to track information. It will make it easier for county staff to convey concerns from the public elements which need to be followed up, whether it be maintenance in the road, as opposed to email traffic. Everything can be monitored through this work order management system. And everything links back to GIS. And
Right, so there is a connection with all of these
yeah.
pieces. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Julie?
Just want to circle back. There was a question about SOMA. Is there a need for more information with respect to that membership? That was the partnership with the city.
Could I say something, Warden?
Go ahead.
Maybe, Julie, I don't know if everyone's familiar with SOMA. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to give us a bit more information. It might be helpful.
Yeah, we'd be pleased to do that.
Thank you.
Is that something that St. Thomas, they're a member now and they're splitting the cost with us to join in?
Okay.
At the moment, SOMA is a member, as well as Perth County, Ingersoll, Tillsonburg, Stratford, and let me just double check, I have a note here. That's it, yeah. And so Elgin County is not a member, and we aren't a member by virtue of the city of St. Thomas. At one point, the town of Elmer, I want to say about a decade ago, was a member of SOMA. So we do not have a representative at the SOMA table at this time.
More information would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Just,
Well,
for me, should be good.
Mr. Warden, through you to the committee, we'll also be bringing forth a report at the next council meeting with respect to SCORE. Direction last year as provided by council was that it'd be a one-year membership and we'd be reporting back to council as a whole, entertaining whether or not council wishes to continue that membership.
Okay,
Right, so,
expected that. Dominique?
so to clarify, all the items on that page means, including SCORE, that they were not planned for 2022.
Correct.
We have to reconsider SCORE, consider SOMA.
Correct.
Right, so they're all above and beyond. Okay, thank you.
And I think, Mr. Warden, if I can, just building on Mary's suggestion, because of the cost price index that was experienced or expected for 22, there may be some of these projects that you might want to consider deferring. I'm not saying defer all, but you might want to defer some. Obviously, there are some that have to be done. But for example, though we've priced it out, it's a schedule yet, I'm talking about the Fillmore Bridge. Is this something that could be done next year or the following year? Is there any difference? I know the cyclists are gonna raise hell if you don't get that deck recovered immediately, but at the same token, it's still structurally sound. It's a usable facility for now. And if the pricing index is going to come back favorable from a labor and or materials point of view, a year down the road, might make more sense. That's what I'm saying. We want to look at some of these more projects in that light.
Yeah, through Mr. Ward, we're happy to bring back a couple different scenarios.
Sure.
And we've already had some internal discussion and expecting that was going to be an outcome of today's presentation. Not a problem.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Finance up next?
That's right.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. In front of you is the organization chart for finance. Reporting into me is the Deputy Treasurer, Jennifer Ford, and Mike Hoekstra, the Purchasing Coordinator. Reporting into Jennifer are a Senior Financial Analyst, a Financial Analyst, as well as an Administrative Assistant. It's kind of a repeat of what we've just discussed, so I'll move beyond that. In terms of department summary, you'll see that operating costs make up a small portion of our department budget. Wages and benefits are what really drive our department costs. Challenges that we face are increasing demands for service, ministry in particular as it relates to long-term care, but also across all sectors are having increasing demands in terms of reporting, which is increasing our workload. Working with Brian and his team on the asset management and integrating that into a financial model. It requires a fair bit of work because there's two separate entities. We've been continuing to work on our financial models to provide you more sophisticated levels of reporting, and we'll continue to do so. You've heard through the IT department and from Michelle, the term human capital management or HCM. You'll hear it again from when HR presents. That's a system that delivers timekeeping, payroll, scheduling, and HR. And so timekeeping and payroll obviously is a big component of our business. We spoke earlier when we were looking at the third quarter review and the challenges associated with pipelines. In terms of successes for 2021, with COVID, there's many reporting demands from the ministry and keeping track of how we're spending our COVID dollars, COVID and Safe Restart funding, our SRF dollars. The HCM launch is a huge undertaking. I'm sure you've all heard of the issues that happened with the Canadian government when they launched their payroll system. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen to us. It's a large undertaking anytime you change a payroll system.
Cost savings.
With the annual report, you may remember that we brought that forward in May this year. In the past, it's always been brought forward in the August to September timeframe. And that's a result of some of the efficiencies we've implemented through our database modeling. We issued the second $6 million debenture this year for Terrace Lodge. We completed the DC development charge study. Even though it's done by a consultant, there's a lot of workload that has to happen at our end, and Jennifer Ford put countless hours into that. And as well as Councillor Giguère is aware of, we've been involved in developing with IT a software application for tracking the donations for the redevelopment of Terrace Lodge. Looking at budget notes, in our memberships, we have memberships into MFOA, the Payroll Association, the Public Buyers Association, as well as we pay for 3 CPA memberships. On our equipment side, we're requesting an increase of $3,000 this year to take it up to $4,000. That is for a more capable folder inserting machine for when we're sending out mailings, in particular with the billings from the homes, just to make that more efficient so that we can have more time available then for focusing in on more value-added areas. If you look at our office supply lines, that's just standard office supplies, but also in that you wouldn't see in other departments is that we spend about $2,000 each year check stock. That's gone down over time as we're moving to, so it's not as significant as it was in the past. In terms of a department summary, the finance department is responsible for all the financial affairs of the municipality and reporting into the CAO and on behalf of council. We're responsible for developing long-term plans and budgets that will provide the necessary funding to deliver the services that our ratepayers need and want. We're ensuring that all revenues are collected and that all our expenses are paid. We're responsible for administering the payroll. We work with the auditors to ensure that we have accurate financial statements. And we provide information to council and staff on any financial matters as required. We already spoke a little bit about insurance today. That is also under the finance department. And with insurance, then also the risk management, what can we do to help mitigate insurance losses in the future? And then in terms of purchasing, under Mike Hoekstra, we're ensuring that we're obtaining the best quality products, goods and services at competitive prices. In terms of wages, this doesn't apply just to finance. This would be across all the departments with salary people. For 2021, we had budgeted for a 2% wage increase. Council approved a 1.75. That not only has an impact in 2021, but it flows through into all the Hitting the screen. It flows through into all the subsequent years as well. Also, as was discussed at the last council meeting and being brought forward today is the discussion around an intern. The rationale for an intern is one, just as a community service. Two, it's also developing a potential for an employee in the future. I mean, although I'm sure none of you would say it, if you look across the table, we're not getting any younger. And as our workforce ages, you're gonna see a turnover, and we need to have that young talent coming in behind and developing local talent to be able to fill those positions. I think there's value in doing that. At the same time, we want to ensure that that person that comes in has a valued experience and that we are able to get value out of that individual as well. So this is a unique time with that rollout of the HCM to be able to definitely provide a quality experience for a student. And then the last bullet point there is what we spoke about earlier in terms of just upgrading to a better quality folding machine, just so that we can spend our time on more value added areas. In terms of budget process, we go through the individual budget items, looking for where there are opportunities to reduce costs. As mentioned earlier, the vast amount is in wages, so we're talking about a fixed cost. The memberships, I mean, you see the memberships already listed, and then really, so you're talking about then really just a few office supplies where we really have any wiggle room in terms of where we can make changes. And what we've been doing every year, as you'll see across all the departments, is we're always looking to hold the line, meaning that we are effectively implementing efficiencies every year, because if we're not asking for more money over the course of 10 years, that's a significant reduction in expenditures in real terms, because we're absorbing all that inflationary impact, and that's across the board with all the departments. And then again, just in terms of budget process, the HCM is a component of this, was one of the significant recommendations out of the service delivery review, in which finance is taking a lead role in rolling out the HCM system. Here, you'll see on the donut chart that there's that little sliver of dark green. That is the non-wage component of our budget. And we don't have external revenue sources, so the cost is all funded through the levy. Looking at this chart of the 2022 wages would be up due to inflation, as well as the internship for $15,000 that we're requesting. On the next chart, same thing. You'll see that we are tracking along the same plan spend as previous, with the exception in 2022 being those two items that we identified, the folding machine and the internship. In terms of highlights, one, as I mentioned earlier, reporting demands continue to grow year over year. And when you take a look at some of the areas that have changed over the last 5 years, and we took a listing of all the reporting we did 5 years ago for homes and everything that we do today, that's up 25%. We take a look at what's happening at the purchasing end in terms of tenders and proposals that are going out the door and need to be completed. Those are up 25% over where they were before. I mean, as we discussed today, we have some significant changes in our capital expenditures that council has approved. All those need to flow through purchasing and be issued. And so Mike is seeing a huge increase in his workload. The monthly reconciliations that we need to do is going up as well. Back in the old days, there used to be a little bit of cash, a lot of checks. But now, in addition to that, We also have EFT, which doesn't really add to workload, but then there's different forms of payment from Square to Braintree to pay tickets to Sierra to PayPal. All of these we need to handle and ensure that we're reconciling, that nothing's going awry. So that's adding to our workload as well. And then what'll be unique to 2022 is with the rollout of HCM. It's a major undertaking and will certainly take significant resources from our department as well as from HR, from human resources across the board, but a large portion will be residing within the finance department. In terms of options, I think the one thing on the table that is open for consideration certainly is the internship. And as I've pointed out, we have a rationale for doing that, but we will certainly take the guidance and direction from this committee and adjust the budget accordingly. And with that, you'll see the recommendations that we were making on those two line items. And I would be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Jim. I'll open the floor for comments. I keep going back to this must-have, nice-to-have. And I look at that last two lines there and I think obviously they would be nice to have, but I'm struggling with the must-have. So, but that's my comment. I'll throw it out to the rest. I haven't made my mind up, but I'm looking where else you can cut because we need to do some cutting. Ed?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden. Jim, just to clarify, for wages for 2022, what's the factor of inflation you're using?
So for the salary elements, we have 2% in the plan for 22 through the 31 cycle.
Right.
And then and that's what we've typically done in the past. And then when council approves a wage increase, then we'll adjust accordingly. And that normally happens in.
So anything council approves over and above the plan, is what you're saying?
Well, normally in the late winter, early spring, HR will bring a recommendation based off of an analysis they do, looking across the sectors. And that recommendation is independent of what's in the budget.
All right.
Their decision isn't influenced by the budget. They will make a reference to say what we're seeing across the board is this, and therefore we recommend this amount. This is how it compares to what was set aside in the budget. And that'll either be, as it was in 2021, was good news.
Yeah.
I mean, it's potential this year that it could be bad news. And we certainly could take a look at making a one-time spike for 2022. For higher wage increases in the budget if we were so directed, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to be handed out in the end. That would be dependent on that, as I said, that review that HR will be doing early next year.
What date does HR usually sample the CPI index to determine that?
It's not a CPI index that what they'll be doing is they'll be looking at. They'll be bringing forward as part of the consideration what has been approved for the union groups. They'll take a look at neighboring counties and municipalities. And they're looking then what the market where the direction of that market. So they're not looking at like a consumer price index or.
Right.
So they're looking at the current market in the wage segment.
Okay.
For municipalities.
And of course, we're looking at a market study results coming in sometime.
Yes, the RFP is out right now.
All right, thanks for that. Regarding going back to the comment you made on reconciliations and the various payment platforms, are they offered throughout all departments, all these platforms, or are they not consolidated or?
It's not offered through all departments because it depends on pay tickets.
Right.
Is dedicated to POA.
Okay.
As an example, Sierra is a library system. PayPal is used as an example for engineering when they're issuing permits. You can you can make payments via PayPal or Braintree. Square is used in the museum, in their gift shop. So they're not, and they all have.
Why are so many damn different platforms? Why not just one?
Kind of wondered that too.
Well, the PayPal the pay tickets, because you need to link
I get that.
to the tickets being issued. Square, and you've probably, I don't know if you've seen the little Square logo when you go shopping. That's often what you'll see retail side. So that's why it's a convenient retail tool. And so when the museum is doing that retail operation, Square is what makes sense to them. PayPal, often when you're online and you're doing purchases, you'll be paying via PayPal. So a lot of those permits are going through an online system. PayPal makes sense there. It's not something that is unique to the county. We are really following the practices that overall industry is using, and different tools make sense in different applications, and that satisfies the needs of those departments. I mean, if we were to tell them, if we told museum you have to accept everything through PayPal, it would be telling your customer, go log into this account. There's a computer, log in and make a PayPal payment for the little jar of whatever you were about to buy. And so it's us being user friendly.
Julie's got a comment.
Yes, in some instances, it's part of a larger component, like Sierra is our integrated library system. So that is our whole database for the books. So in that case, it makes sense to have the pay function built in within the broader software, just to give you another example.
Yeah, each sector tends to have its own preferred relevant tool, so, yeah.
Just like each municipality has its own road portal, like. But I agree with what, going back to the engineering, let's get them all on one side. Makes a lot more sense. But anyway,
The end user.
whatever.
Yeah, I agree for internal mechanisms and tools, but for end user tools, because we're serving so many different types, I don't know if that's realistic. But, yeah.
Further comments?
Mr. Chair, yes, I have no concept of the volume of letters being folded. And I'm curious, I think you mentioned it was only for paper billing.
Yes.
So is there a plan for e-billing? And noticing how many corporations now charge you if you want paper, then you pay an extra fee. Is this a direction we are considering?
We do a lot electronically now. However, we have not forced that up amongst our clientele. And I think in particular with the homes, I think Michelle would have to speak to that. I mean, she would probably have concern because when you're talking about long-term care, you often have the elderly looking after the elderly. And it's their comfort level with technology. If we were dealing exclusively with younger people, we probably wouldn't even have to have a policy in place. It would just happen, right? But given that we do have many of the people that we're dealing with are older and not comfortable with electronic. And if we were to mandate that and council were to support it, I mean, from a finance perspective, I would have no issue with it. But I think Michelle would probably say that, it would not maybe be fair to some of her residents.
I was thinking not so much perhaps mandating, but like the default being e-billing. And then by choice, you would say, no, I prefer paper, which I think we can commit to being completely accessible, but recognizing that there's a fee for that. And I think that's commonly accepted now, that there's a fee for paper, there's a fee for folding the paper. Wondering either we minimize the need for a machine or we fund the cost of the machine through those who prefer a paper version. So, yeah, sorry.
No, I think you've highlighted a modernized process that will bring more information back
Okay.
To the committee on.
Okay.
Thanks for raising that.
further comments? Are we good, Mary?
Actually, one quick question, if I may. I was thinking for the intern, because a strong part of the rationale is the relationship building with the talent pool. So would you see that as a potential annual? Is this something we should be considering more on a long-term basis? If that's truly the rationale, I'm thinking developing a relationship with one person may not be sufficient, and is there another fund that, through professional development, through economic development, for example, like, is that something we could strategize and put somewhere else? And so thinking out loud.
First, in terms of the long term, I would prefer to do it this year and see how well that whole process works, and then come back with a recommendation whether it makes sense long term or not.
Okay.
As it relates to the funding, we took a look at funding sources. On cultural services, they're able to get special funding from the federal government, but that doesn't apply to somebody who's coming into the finance department. There's summer student programs, but then that doesn't apply to municipal government. So we haven't been able to identify a funding source that would apply to bringing in an intern into finance in a municipal government.
But perhaps internally, there might be another pocket in terms of our own internal workforce attraction and, or even our efficiency thing.
I can talk with Amy. I don't know if she's probably, Amy, are you on the line as we can?
I may.
Yeah, sorry.
And we'll take this
Yeah.
and we'll bring you back some more information. It's clear that there's a lot of information outstanding with respect to sources of funding and government programs available. So we'll bring more back to the committee.
Because I think it's a good idea, but I'm thinking let's be even more, think more broadly or long-term.
Yeah, thanks for raising it.
Okay.
HR.
Are we ready to move on to the next one? Okay. Welcome, Amy.
Have we do that or do we do the POA?
Oh, POA.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jim.
So for POA, our supervisor is Deanna Lamers, and she has 3 clerks that work for her. In the past as well, they have had a part-time employee that is assisted for vacation coverage, but right now they simply have the full-time people.
I'll just note, we did eliminate that position, Jim. Sorry, I missed that. And reviewing the slides, there is just for full-time equivalent positions for POA.
Yeah. And in terms of the terminology, I think you may have seen this before, but there's part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 1 is your standard tickets when you get pulled over on the side of the road. Part 2 is your parking tickets, and part 3 is for your more serious offenses. In terms of budget notes, in the memberships, you'll see in there what's included is the Municipal Court Managers Association, which is a valuable tool for Deanna to stay connected with her peers, ensuring that she remains compliant with all the needs associated with POA. Office supplies, in addition to just standard office supplies that you would see in other departments, they also need to buy yearly tickets and summons books, which would not be a standard office supply in most other departments. Legal and professional fees are prosecution, Crown, and the Justice of the Peace. You'll see bank charges for Mineris related to debit and credit payments that we take. Purchase services include payments for witnesses, interpreters, transcriptions. We have Region of Durham, which assists in the collections, and Equifax. The funds, revenue that we receive, less the cost that we incur, are dispersed amongst our municipal partners. And with a 10% of the costs being retained to cover our overhead. As well, payments need to be made to the province for victim fine surcharge and dedicated fines. Part of the process each day would be doing a daily reconciliation of over and shorts in terms of money collected versus what shows up in the computer system. In terms of computer systems, ICON is one of the major systems that is a system from the ministry that keeps track of the fines and the fees associated with that. Looking at a department summary, typically we have 10,000 charges thereabouts a year, and there are 80 to 90 court days in a year. In terms of challenges, because we need, the court is administered by the justice. So we need to work with the justice in terms of scheduling court times. The ICON system that I mentioned previously from the province is an old-fashioned system, probably dating back from the 70s, which does make it difficult to use, but that is something that is used across the province. The last 2 years have been unique in POA because of COVID. There were no trials in 2020. In 2021, this year, we began with video trials. And we're waiting to get permission from the justice to begin in-person trials again. Just an overview in terms of changes from in 21. As I mentioned, that the court sessions have been on hold. Video trials began in July. And as a result, there's a backlog. And we'll be seeing that backlog play out throughout 2022 as we try and catch up. The other impact of COVID is simply that there were less fines being issued during the pandemic, both in terms of part 1 and 2, as well as the parking tickets, the part 2s, excuse me. Wages, you've got the standard inflationary increases, and then as well, because we have a new manager in the department, she's at a lower step, and so you'll see a temporary lowering of cost as she works her way back up through the various step levels. Those savings that you're seeing on a temporary basis as a result of that, those ultimately flow through then to our municipal partners. There are no consultants in POA. However, we do have some purchase services. CAMS is a system used by many of the courts across the province that help with the court, and the system's used by both court administration, prosecution, and collections. We also have a recording system for when we're in court to record the proceedings. Also already mentioned the ICON system. We have the fire alarm system. And then there are the costs we have for transcriptionists, interpreters, the pay tickets that we talked about earlier, Equifax, and the region of Durham for the collections of unpaid.
I'm just going to interject. We have 7 more presentations to do in 45 minutes. So can we provided this information in advance.
Okay, I won't repeat it. I guess the major thing to remember in terms of POA is this is the only department that is actually brings in more revenue than money that it spends. So it helps reduce taxes. The net revenue coming in is in excess of 100,000 a year, and that's the result of that 10% overhead that we're able to retain. So that's the important nuance when you're looking at POA compared to anywhere else. And yeah, I can wrap it up with that.
Of course, we're still funding an edifice, POA return. Yes.
Are we good with that, or do we need discussion? I think we can move on. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Amy, welcome.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Warden and committee members. So I'll go through this rather quickly because I know we're behind, but happy to answer any questions and bring additional information back if need be. So first, this shows our total spend in '22 that is anticipated net of revenues. And I'll go through the details that represent this amount throughout the presentations. The next slide shows the team members. You can see a few new team members this year over last year. So we have Stephanie, Sarah, and Stacy all new to the team, and then a few of us familiar faces as well. So overall department summary, the HR department supports all service areas across the county and provides accessibility services to all Elgin and Middlesex County municipalities. The majority of the HR budget is comprised of wages and benefits for staff, being that we are a service-based department. Plus we have accessibility costs related to the committee and revenue from the Middlesex service provision. And cost of recruitment and retention initiatives and processes, continuing professional development for the staff, and corporate training and development initiatives as well. 2021 achievements, pretty high level, I'll go through. So 21 did require a great deal of policy creation and implementation and associated training. Both ONA and CUPE collective agreements were settled earlier this year within mandate and with an additional year added to those agreements. And I did hear the question earlier about the amount of increase for both of those. So Michelle was correct that ONA was 1.75 for 22. CUPE was 2% and, sorry, CUPE was 1.75 and SEIU was 2% for the 3 collective agreements, but the 2 were settled this year. Much work has gone into the human capital management system, which I know has been discussed quite a bit today already, so I won't go into too much detail there, but in addition to that, planning for HR shared services development, organizational structure changes, and all of these are related back to recommendations within the service delivery review. Accessibility wise, compliance requirements are well underway for compliance by the end of the year. And I plan to bring a report to council shortly to update on the organizational culture initiative that did get underway just recently. And this slide kind of shows just some of the data behind what's been going on over the last few years in the department. Recruitment has shown the sharpest increase in the HR department and believed to be related to the pandemic and staffing challenges that have ensued. As well as, and we expect this pressure to continue with the ministry initiatives such as the 4 hours of care likely to put continued pressure on staffing needs. Non-occupational claims seem to be increasing, also likely pandemic related. And we're seeing a growing number of mental health related absences as well. Budget notes, 2022 budget includes funds to continue work on initiatives like the organizational culture program that we've started and continue work on making the recruitment process more modern and efficient as well. Next slide. The variance between 21 into 22 is largely created by the new position that was approved by council in September of this year. And we also are requesting a slight increase to the professional development line, an adjustment due to moving the market you'll see an adjustment also moving the market salary review into current year as opposed to starting next year. Consultants that we might use. So as far as employment law consultants, I'm showing the last few years, and we have a 10-year average spend of about $53,000 a year when it comes to the lawyers that we use for significant employment matters. And we hope now that we have an excellent internal senior legal counsel on board, that his assistance will be able to help us offset some of these external legal costs. Training consultants, so when we do need a subject matter expert related to health and safety training, leadership training, and other staff training, we might utilize experts there for training initiatives. And the market salary review will also be utilizing a consultant, and that RFP is out right now and being evaluated. So the budget process involves a review of prior year's budgeted dollars as well as actual spend, and we investigate into any variance and planning within the department as far as what's coming up in the year ahead. And we do constantly seek opportunities to share across municipalities rather than always purchasing externally. This is the finance slide. So again, being a service-based department, the majority of the costs you see are associated with the staff in our department. The only revenue line is currently related to cost sharing of the accessibility coordinator role with Middlesex County. And so wages are up from the addition of a new position. Non-wage operating costs are down compared to the prior year because of the one-time increase of the market salary review. And revenue from sharing of the accessibility coordinator role has remained pretty consistent year over year. So the variation that you observe here is related to staffing changes. 2022 highlights. So long-term care staffing is anticipated to drive significant HR workload throughout 2022. Projects and development that weren't completed in 2020 or 2021 will be prioritized in the next year. So including recruitment process improvements, leadership and organizational culture development, wellness programming, and successful implementation of the human capital management software. Accessibility initiatives will include working with local municipal partners in developing an accessible elections guide, as well as a number of policy amendments. So finally, the overall recommendation within the HR budget is for approximately $700,000. That represents the total 2022 HR budget net of the revenues. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Amy. Questions for Amy? Comments? Everyone happy? Looks that way, or getting tired, one or the other, both probably. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Does anyone need a 3-minute break, or we soldier on?
I could do 3 minutes.
Sure.
Okay?
Can have.
Councillor French will be back in 3 minutes.
The time constraints we're under, so you have the presentation before you. So I'm just going to cut to the key challenges in 2022 and just focus on 3 things that I would like to present to you today as far as budget impacts. And that is the e-resources and the request for an increase to our e-resources. Secondly, just again to alert you to the fact that our leases are coming due. And that is an issue that we'll have to consider. We'll have more information for you as council regarding those lease renewals, which come at the end of 2022 for all branches, but certainly Elmer is one that's coming up in the course of 2022. And Julie and I are already in discussions about how we're going to go about handling that. And thirdly, the service delivery review recommendations. So as far as successes for 2021, I just want to focus on one that I didn't put in here, and I should have, and that is the transition to a digital services librarian from the former manager of programs community development position, and allowing us to kind of tailor our services to where we need to go on the digital side. And we've had great success already out of the gate with that. Want to talk a little bit about, so on library collections, Jenna, the fact that we had a 10-year plan for materials and that it did expire. And at that time, there was both a need to catch up on the collection and to provide for an inflationary increase. For now, we're just recommending that that collection be maintained in terms of physical materials through a annual inflationary increase, which I know has been the topic of what is that number in CPI, and if we're taking the October number, it could be more dramatic, and that also applies to our leases. Take the October CPI number on that. And I can also provide you with further details about the market analysis that I have put in front of you regarding both electronic resources and materials. I've given you a couple of snapshots of slides of resources that we use. So we do use really good information from our vendors and from the market to project where these costs are going, which is why we're recommending on the print side that we maintain the budget just with inflationary increases, but that one-time increase to electronic resources side on that. So you can skip past the market analysis slides. And one of the things we just want to show you as well is term of the usage on the library side of our collection. So even though our numbers are drastically down in 2020 and in 2021 on the physical side, that is almost exclusively due to COVID. We expect those numbers to be restored, and we're already seeing signs of that. We're about 80% of our regular circulation now. That'll hopefully get back to pre-pandemic levels. So on the physical side, you're seeing that our materials are being used at about the same rate. It's on the digital electronic side that we're seeing dramatic growth and cost pressures on our budget. And a lot of these are US-based vendors, and that's a huge factor for us as well. Finally, focus on the service delivery review recommendations. We have worked really hard with St. Thomas this year. We've had some real wins in working with them on breakthroughs such as interlibrary loan, book club kits, even some joint delivery opportunities. But as far as finding synergies between our respective vendors, where we are actually going to leverage major dollars, they're just not there. And we have identified those vendors and worked directly with them, and they're not telling us like that, through co-buying, because we're using vendors in different ways for different types of materials. St. Thomas processes materials in-house. We don't process in-house. There's just varying degrees, and we have worked to try to get numbers from them, but we're not seeing this number, which was basically, I think, 3% when the service delivery review was put forward, which is a number they thought was reasonable, but we have really, again, worked through that. If anything, we're seeing cost pressures on the opposite side, and that is to sustain what we have is becoming increasingly difficult. So, and I want to credit Natalie for working directly with St. Thomas Public Library on those efforts. Just to kind of close it off, in terms of our budget process, you've heard many of the same things here today, but we're constantly working with IT, we're constantly working with finance, we're projecting out. This is just a collaborative effort, and it happens every day we're working with the other departments, because we realize that a lot of these things are, most of our budget, wages, leases, right? And those are things that are just sort of fixed costs, and the rest of it, we then are working with IT particularly, and in terms of a lot of those costs when it comes to connectivity at the branches, computer software and hardware. So on that, and the budget slides again, as I indicated, mostly wages and leases. So with that, I'm going to focus on the recommendations, and they're for you regarding the increase to the electronic resources of $5,000 for the budget year 2022. And that we maintain and establish a new 10-year plan with inflationary increases on the capital or materials side. I will continue to look for those opportunities and efficiencies with St. Thomas Public Library wherever feasible. And I also should mention that the one thing we are going to do is mitigate the losses from our fine-free initiative, and pretty confident in that. So there is an efficiency there that it's not a dollar and cents efficiency, but it's an efficiency, right? And we're willing to mitigate that loss through our budget. So with that in mind, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you rushing through, looking at the clock, but yes. Floor for questions or comments. I think we're all right, Mary. Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Mr. Gordon, I
Yes.
just want to make one comment. Just looking at the statistics from this year specifically so far and last year, I know that Brian's already mentioned it, but we're certainly going to have to look at different ways of, doing our services for everyone because it's evident that things are changing. And so the way we think of library services or that the way we have been thinking about them is drastically going to change. So I think we need to be prepared for that and really to have an open mind to new ways of getting those services out for our residents.
Thank you, Mary. Dominique?
Yeah, one quick comment, even though it's been a few hours since I shared my opening questions, but I don't want to lose sight of, every department, including looking at where are there opportunities to offset some of these increases, which we realize you have no control over. But at the same time, we have to also realize the impact. And I know I had another point, but it is late. No, I'm forgetting that, but I appreciate that, you did follow up on the service delivery review and was it possible to realize some of the savings or not? And my other point was, in fact, because in the survey, there were quite a few comments about wanting, your area being one, I say your area, but you know what I mean, being one area where we could spend less. And so I think we need to be mindful of that in terms of either promoting or more clarity as to what we provide and the value of what we provide, because I certainly believe in it. But I think your area is one that has to really pay attention to that public input.
On that, I can assure you, I did read all those.
I'm sure you did.
Thank you, Brian. Administrative services. Catherine, welcome.
Hello, Mr. Warden. Thank you through you to the committee. I am going to do my best to get through this presentation as quickly as possible because it does cover quite a large service area. Our presentation covers both council and warden, administrative services, legal services, tree commissioner, weed inspector, and then also ambulance as well. So I'm going to have Jenna skip straight to the department summary key challenges. You all know who you are and what your service area does. So I'll skip that. Of course, the pandemic response. This is both a challenge, but also can be seen a little bit as a positive thing. Most conferences and meetings remained virtual in 2021, which did result in savings in mileage, meals, and development. But we do see conferences are starting to return in person in probably maybe around the second quarter of 2022. So we can see that this trend will likely be returning to normal. On that note, we also are seeing increased costs for venue rentals, refreshments, and other event-related costs when we do organize events on behalf of council. Some of this could be pandemic related, and this is driving up the cost of hosting our in-person events. But it's important to note that we have been experiencing these cost pressures, at least in my experience, since at least 2017. It's become particularly challenging to organize our annual Warden's Banquet within the budget that we've set. We haven't changed or adjusted this budget in over a decade, not in my time here. So that's something that we need to consider as a challenge. Costs have increased. Another challenge that can also be seen as a positive is that the public's desire to engage in two-way communication and provide feedback on a variety of projects and policies has increased significantly in the past 18 months. Increased transparency and responsiveness at the local government level is desirable, and it's very exciting to see that the public is interested in engaging with us, providing us feedback, engaging with our tools. But with this increased engagement is also accompanied by increased promotional costs. And then the final challenge is just that there is a municipal election that will be held in 2022. I'm sure that you're all aware, and that we will be planning for an orientation associated with that. If Jenna can go to the next slide. I won't take too long, but I think despite the COVID-19 pandemic, the restrictions, switching to virtual meetings, back to in-person meetings, back to virtual meetings, navigating the hybrid environment, Despite all this, council and committees have maintained a regular and active schedule and have moved a number of important projects and initiatives forward, including the Terrace Lodge redevelopment, Terrace Lodge fundraising campaign, connectivity committee work, rural initiatives planning advisory committee has launched a new grant program, as well as assisted with review of the OP review, engagement, and discussion paper guidance. The budget committee has launched a new annual report format and also increased engagement initiatives, and also the community safety and well-being plan is completed and submitted. So despite COVID challenges, committees and council are still extremely busy. So the 2022 10-year plan variance over 2021 10-year plan, an addition of $20,000 is being proposed for costs that are associated with the joint countywide council orientation. These funds are only required every 4 years and will cover orientation costs for the County of Elgin and any interested local municipal partners. Preliminary discussions with the local municipal partner clerks indicate that this is of interest. I have some more information about costs associated with this as well. This includes not only joint orientation sessions with speakers, orientation guide. In the past, there have been bus tours of the county, and if we are to include local municipal partners, we may need more than one bus. It will likely take a couple days. We have a big county. And then also costs associated with a facilitator for council strategic plan for the upcoming term. Additionally, a budget increase of $2,000 is being proposed for the warden's banquet. The budget has not been increased in over a decade and costs have risen significantly. So this is largely to cover the increased cost of food and venue. And thirdly, an annual council and committees promotion and marketing budget of $5,000 is being proposed to support committee and council-driven engagement initiatives. So corporate communications is within the administrative services portfolio, and this covers the entire county. So in our department, we do promotions for engineering projects and official planning projects, committee projects, finance projects, and work very closely with all departments to promote these initiatives to the public, to engage with the public. When we are able to, we do use funds that are available within projects. So for example, I'll use the Transportation Master Plan. That is an existing project which has funds in it for engagement as well. But we find from time to time that there are projects that fall within council or committee responsibility, and they don't have a particular engagement budget. And we do our best. We're very blessed in our department to have skilled graphic designers. We do everything that we can to be efficient and do our own graphic design for posters and advertising, web design, all sorts of stuff to keep the costs down in that way. But we do from time to time want to advertise in traditional media to make sure that we're reaching everyone in all areas of our county. So that does come with a cost. And we're anticipating the Indigenous Strategy Consultation, ongoing costs associated with the COVID-19 response survey, budget process consultation, which we will be doing again in 2022 for the 2023 process, and then any other projects that may come up. So that's sort of wraps up the council and warden portion. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee has before I move on.
Let's skip right to the variance slides.
Oh, for the administrative services? All right. So we have a ways to go, Jenna.
There are very few changes, but a few key ones worth highlighting, and that's what we'll endeavor to do given that this information was provided to you in advance.
So for the administrative services section in 2022, there are organizational changes that accounted for the significant portion of operating increases. And these are the hiring in July of a senior legal counsel to assist with the increased volume of legal work at the county and local municipal partner level. Also, the demands of COVID-19 increased community engagement and committee activity necessitated the addition of a second full-time legislative services coordinator, which accounted for a minimal increase as this position replaced an administrative assistant role. Additionally, using COVID-19 relief funding, a 2-year contract was approved for a full-time main reception administrative assistant, and a placeholder has been included in the 10-year plan to support this position on an ongoing basis. This is subject to council approval when the contract position ends at the end of 2022. Additionally, to improve efficiencies as referenced in the service delivery review, and a transfer to electronic processes. Electronic agenda software at an annual cost of $30,000 is being proposed. This solution was proposed in 2021 and was eliminated from the budget due to competing priorities. However, due to the demands associated with the increased volume of committee work, council agendas being compiled on a weekly basis, it's strongly recommended we reconsider in 2022. I would be happy to provide any additional information that the committee requires. Additionally, there is an ambulance ask as well, which I think is just one slide back. Or before that, yes, thank you. I think Julie was going to speak to ambulance.
Right, so we are requesting that an additional $166,000 be added to the 10-year plan for the replacement of 18 laptops every 4 years. So we're reducing the amortization of those capital assets as a result of their lifespan, like their actual lifespan. And this is an obligatory expense. So great job keeping it brief, Catherine, and our team's happy to answer any questions you might have.
Ed, go ahead.
Okay, going back to the, oh God, what did you call it? The early engagement following the election.
Orientation.
Dude, that would be-
Orientation.
You know, it's not a bad idea. I didn't participate the last time I was at another conference, but anyway, if there's value in the lower tiers, there's seen some value in here, why don't we cost that share with our municipal partners? Half of it from the county, the rest of it from the municipal partners to think about. There was another one I was thinking about.
While you look for that, if I may comment on that same one, I haven't looked at the PD trend, but often the professional development, even for counselors, is underspent. So I'm wondering, do we really need an additional envelope? Or
Can it be funded from that?
can it be funded for, I don't know. Like I said, I don't have it on top of my head, but something to look at, like I'm wondering, do we really need that top up? But I agree with the cost sharing.
We'll do that assessment based on kind of averages of the professional development and conference funds that have been expended by counselors over a period of time and report that back to you with more information about cost sharing with our municipal partners.
Makes sense.
Okay, going down to the electronic agenda software, I know we deferred it last year. If you can come back to us and give us an idea of what did the SDR suggest would be the offsetting savings by doing this $30,000 annual investment?
Be happy to do that. We've also been collecting some data ourselves, just with respect to amount of time spent on,
Yes.
our reliance on Adobe Acrobat as opposed to a more fulsome agenda creating software. So we'd be pleased to bring that forward.
Okay, well, this is the idea. It helps put the argument on the table.
Mr. Warden,
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
I'd just like to make a comment, please. Also with the warden's banquet, now, I may be out of turn saying this, but it's just the amount of money is $2,000. Would it be inappropriate if we were to each have to pay $10 per se for our ticket to go to the warden's banquet? Like, what's it gonna harm if each person that's invited to go pays $10 for a ticket? Just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if it's appropriate or not.
Go ahead, Julie.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. Through you. That's a great option, Councillor French, and we'll do some number crunching and bring back some options for the committee's consideration at your next meeting.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Dominique?
Mr. Chair, and all due respect to the warden and previous wardens, I was going to make a similar comment and even go further. That since we are asking all departments to look for ways to offset, I think it behooves council to look at the banquet and to offer to pay. And I would like to see not only the 2,000 being proposed off the table, but a significant reduction and contribution from council members. Pay per attendee.
I'd be interested in seeing what's happening with, I know that prior to me serving on county council, I went to the cost associated, and I didn't know. enough that I wanted to attend, so I paid it, so.
Yeah, it shouldn't be the rate.
I think probably the biggest cost, looking at Catherine, is cost. But then the danger of setting a budget, not looking at for 10 years. That budget had gone up 1.5%, 2% every year. It may have been more in line. And that's like any cost. But
At any time, we can eliminate that line item.
Right. Good job.
thank you, Kathy. Yes, it was a great job. Where are we now?
Trainer?
Speed dating is like speed patients. Speed.
Jeff,
2 minutes.
whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Afternoon, Mr. Ward, members of the committee.
Sorry, Jeff, we'll preface this one by saying that while the public hasn't had as much time with this budget, county councilors did receive a fulsome report recently in closed session with respect to some changes within Jeff's department, which will give Jeff a chance to kind of give you a high-level overview today.
Yeah, I'll give you I'll kind of hit the key points within the presentation and I'll be open for any questions. So if you want to start with the workforce slide, as you know, currently I am a single full-time employee within the department, but council has approved for an administrator and potentially a emergency program coordinator that will be looked at halfway through the 2022 year. Key points in the department overview. We have been very successful with the training side of things. The key point to point out on the fire side is that the EMS portfolio would be shifted to the emergency management fire training side of things and taken off the CEO's plate for 2022. And with the emergency management side, the key overview I would say is that we have been able to expand that portfolio to include, to go from 2 municipalities in 2021, and we're now currently offering it to 4 municipalities of the lower municipalities. 2021 successes. We have been able to expand the fire training partnership. We have now are working with 6 of the 7 local municipal partners. The 7th LMP is utilizing some of the training that we're offering. They just haven't joined in on the partnership at this time. We have 16 area municipalities that are supporting the school partnership. We have joined with the Fire College to bring a school to Elgin County. And then we have been able to, as I said, expand the CMC pilot program to 4 of the LMPs at this time. We'll skip over the key budget notes and we'll go right to the variances because they're all identified in there. So the overall variances in the 2022 budget over the 2021 budget, 56,000 for departmental restructuring. That moves to a manager position with an administrative assistant. And then included in the budget at this time is that EM program coordinator to start at the 6-month mark. And then moving forward in the 10-year plan, it is allotted for. Purchase services, you'll see a big increase in the purchase services side. That is, we've taken our course list for 2022, broke down what our instructor costs, what our expenses will be, and you'll see those numbers reflected in the purchase services and the supply. Those numbers are offset in the revenue side of the budget. Within the budget process, we have looked at our main focus was how do we make Elgin County safer at the county level, but also within all of the lower tier municipalities. We've also looked at the service delivery review and the talks about collaboration, shared services, creating trust within partnerships between the county and the local municipal partners. And I think that we have been able to focus on that in 2021 with an ability to expand that partnership in 2022. Also the EMS, moving that out of the CAO's portfolio was also addressed in the service delivery review. So we've been able to achieve that. And then planning for ways to make NFPA certification. As we know, the mandatory certification is coming from the province. So how do we make it accessible to the local municipal partners through training partnerships? When we look at the charts, In the past, this budget has been mainly financed through the levy. Currently, you'll see in the budget summaries, large impact, we'll just switch to the next slide, John. Large increases in the revenue side, but also in the wages and benefits and into the costs. As we said, that is, those costs and are offset by the revenue. And we are expecting that 50% of the administrative assistants wages and benefits will be able to be offset through revenues created through the training school. 10-year cash flow, you can see slight increases there, increases that are go over the 10-year plan. Those are based of operation of the school. And as we say, they're offset by revenues. At this time, the 10-year plan for the capital, we have a very short vision at this time. We want to see a full year of the school before we can truly recognize what type of capital asset investments we'll need to put into the training partnership and what the local municipal partners will be looking from us as a county. So you'll see that we have some items in there in the early set of the 10-year plan, and that will be adjusted once we kind of know some of the outcome of the school in the training partnerships. As we said, the revenue, the main portion of the revenues are based from local municipal partners, so they pay for the training that's there. Also, we are cost per service for any outside departments to send students to training. And then we have some revenue from the levy. And then expenditures are based on the 4 LMPs in the emergency management system. So basically, once the pilot is over, we will be going to a cost per service for emergency management services that we're currently offered for the 4 that are involved at this time. And then any capital expenditures are currently based on, the main focus this year is the Emergency Operations Center is being redeveloped through the facilities budget. So the furniture and technologies and things that need to go into that room to make it functioning as an emergency operations center do show up in the capital side of this budget. So then the main highlights, the pandemic, in my opinion, has showed us an increased requirement for us to work collectively between the LMPs and the county as far as emergency management goes. I think we've been able to do that through this 2022 budget. We've been able to bring our fire training partnership together. We're being able to offer a course calendar with over 40 courses. 2 of those courses are recruit classes with over 40 students in each class. And then we've been able to redesign the County Emergency Operations Center, which is also the backup for most of the local municipal partners, to make it so that it is a very user-friendly, technology-based room that can achieve our needs. The recommendations are that the wages and benefits line be adjusted to reflect approved changes made by council on October 12th, 2021. That the changes to the purchase service line, supplies line, mileage line, and revenue lines be approved to support the operation of the Elgin Middlesex Regional Fire School, and that the capital projects presented to be approved to help support the fire training and emergency management initiatives throughout the 2022 calendar year. And I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment to say, 'cause part of the discussions that we had at council, I think led to the fact that it would be useful, I think, for a ratepayer to quantify the extent of the savings for the local municipal partners, so that the investment here that shows as an increase spending, when you take the view of the one ratepayer, in fact, the net is a saving. So, but if we don't combine the 2 stories, it's not obvious. I think that would be very useful. Otherwise, it could be misinterpreted.
Through you, Mr. Warden, to Councillor Jiguer, that work is already underway. So we heard you.
Thank you.
On it.
That is a good news story. I don't want to miss it.
Exactly. But it could be interpreted as negative if not.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you.
Very good, Jeff. Thank you.
The utility trailer, is it already here or is it to be purchased?
Sorry, say that again.
Utility trailer.
So the idea for the utility trailer is that, right now, to move equipment from one station to the next station to provide training has been a bit problematic at times, making multiple trips. So a utility trailer would be able to be used to store some of our assets that we bring together as a county, then also to be able to locate them to wherever we're offering the training at that time. And then we can also use it for emergency management purposes for, I'm thinking for trade shows, different events within the community, because we can have it advertised for both the school, but also for emergency management purposes. So it works in multiple facets.
Okay, an estimated cost on that?
So we've got 15,000 in the budget right now. That's for trailer, lettering and like locks so that we can make sure that the unit is safe at all times. And that's our budgeted number at this time.
Okay, thank you.
There's a couple local providers that we've been in discussions with to buy locally.
Okay, go ahead, Julie.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. So any other questions about emergency management fire training before we move on? Councillor French, are you good? Great. So in the interest of time, we have two more areas that are included in your agenda that we won't get to today. One is corporate services and one is a budget wrap-up, which I actually think will form part of the overarching presentation that we'll start with at the next budget committee meeting. I will just point out that we recognize that today was a big day. We provided you with a lot of information, a lot of new information that was over and above what was included in your agenda packages. So hindsight 2020, we should have booked an entire day for this, and we'll do so moving forward. And I also appreciate that you're going to need some time to digest this information. And at your next meeting, date to be determined, which we'll discuss next, we'll provide an overview presentation that focuses on the corporation as a whole. And we'll show how new and established programs and services are all interconnected. We'll respond to the questions that you asked of each service area directly within each departmental presentation. And we'll make sure that those departments who were kind of rushed through at the end of today start the next budget presentation. So they'll go first next. We'll also present revised presentations that include 6 key elements. One is to what extent each department took into consideration public input received through the survey. To what extent planning for 2022 did the department take into consideration or account for inflation pressures? To what extent have we considered offsets, or in other words, what are we willing to give up? And we'll make some clear connections and provide more information about how priorities and initiatives link back to the service delivery review recommendations, as well as to what extent departments have collaborated to develop the draft budget through the lens of the corporation as a whole rather than silos. And lastly, if each department was faced with a 5% cut, what would we recommend be reduced or eliminated? And what are the risks associated with this? So we're pleased to come back to the committee with those presentations. And while the committee had agreed to, or at least received, a preliminary schedule in July, it included departmental presentations today and then approving a final budget on November 23rd. Nothing in between. And we realize after today, that's a lot to ask of the committee. And as such, if Jenna, you could bring up the conclusion slide, which is consideration of additional meetings. We'll just take a look at everyone's schedules and see if we're able to dedicate a whole day and thoroughly go through outstanding information. Alternatively, you may only need a half day. We're really looking to the committee to see what it is that you need. So we'll respond to direction for outstanding information and provide you with those more detailed departmental presentations that you've requested. And we're proposing a date of November the 8th.
And do you want time? Or?
Well, we have a full day blocked, but
06. I'm good that day. I got a dentist at 8 o'clock, but I can change that.
Counselor French?
Yes, I'm okay on the 8th of November.
Okay, should we block the whole day
Block it.
to be safe? Okay. And then we've also set aside a half day on November 16th. And what I'm proposing there is that the committee would review revised budgets that incorporate committee direction and changes. Assuming that you'll receive departmental presentations, additional information on November the 8th, and provide us with some clear direction. Then you'll see first draft. And then on November the 23rd, you'll receive So you'll provide further direction that we'll incorporate into the draft budget. So we'll just recap at a meeting the committee's direction. Then as planned, in July, November 23rd will be when you receive the first draft budget, which incorporates all of the elements that you've considered at today's meeting, November 8th and November 16th. And finally, on November 30th, we'll incorporate any feedback that we've received on the 23rd and present final draft for your consideration. And then we'll take it to County Council on December the 9th. Happy to tweak this plan to suit the committee's needs. Okay, if you agree with it, we'll send out calendar invites and do some work on our end. I would like, if I can, Mr. Warden, to just quickly thank Financial Services and each of the department heads who put a ton of work into today's meeting, preparing for today's meeting, all of the back end work that's required from our financial services team. They were working late in the night on Thursday night to make sure that we had a fulsome committee package. And I'd like to extend my appreciation to the team for their great work and to the team across the county for their ongoing efforts.
I certainly want to echo that. I think we realized it was a long day today. I think a lot of great discussion, that food for thought and kick the tires, all those things. So thank you. Good thank you to everyone.
Mr. Warden,
Yes, Mary.
could I make a comment, please?
Yes.
I just want to say to staff that because of COVID, we haven't seen much of you for the last couple of years, but we truly appreciate all your work, each and every one of you. You do a great job. We can't do our job without you. And we owe it to the public to, do these kinds of things. I know it's a lot of work. It's really onerous, but we owe it to the public to do this. And I know it's frustrating and it's hard, and we've really had to work under some difficult situations, but I personally want to thank each and every one. And we're a group. We're in this together, and we have to keep working together. So I'm really pleased with this. Today's been a great day. Thank you.
Well said, Mary.
Just one housekeeping item, if I may, with my
Certainly
quick
may.
hat on. We failed to report following the Rise and Report motion. So if we could just get some support for the recommendation that the closed session report from the Director of Homes and Senior Services be received for information.
Mover and seconder for that. Jaguar, catch a ball.
French.
Oh, French. I will call the vote. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you.
I just want to make sure Mary got on the minutes.
Are we ready to adjourn?
Yep, there's just number 11 is date of next meeting. We will meet for a full day on November the 8th. We'll send out calendar invites to that effect.
At this time, without further ado, I will call for a motion to adjourn. Moved by French, Ketchabah. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. Stay safe. Thanks, staff. Appreciate it.